Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast. We have a really awesome guest this week. We have the one and only Frenchy Cannoli, the best hash maker there is. Uh, I've had the pleasure of meeting him multiple times, taking one of his classes, and enjoying a lot of his incredible hash. And we're super stoked to have him on today. As always, we have Tommy.
Hey, Tommy J here. Glad to be here. Also, really exciting to share some more time with Frenchy. I was fortunate enough to run into Frenchy in multiple locations. Man gets around more than my ex-wife and with her boyfriend. I'm telling you. But we had some really good hash out in Vegas. Got a chunk out there. Some other events. I had the opportunity to go up to the class in San Francisco. Wasn't able to get it. And so for the entire week after that class, I just kept hearing from Steve all the incredible things about the class. So I'm really glad to be able to catch up on some of this. Glad to be here on the show with everybody out there in the live audience. You're in for a good one today. In for a good one.
We got Roger.
How y'all doing today? I'm from ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, and I'm rolling me up a pineapple haze doobie right here. Yepper. Ready to go for the show.
We got Mr. Green Jeans.
Hey everybody, greenjeansgarden.com. Yeah, I'm one of the OGs. And really glad to be here. It's awesome. I'm glad you guys keep inviting me back. And this is going to be a great show because hash making is about skills, and I'm all about skills. Very excited.
We got Hogmaster with us today.
What's going on, everybody? Nice to be here.
We got Brain Grow.
Good evening, everybody.
And of course, we have Frenchy. Thanks for joining us today, Frenchy. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, thank you for having me. About myself, I traveled for 18 years when I was 18, just to be sure that I would get my retirement plan. So I took it up front. And I spent every one of those years at the season in a producing country, deep inside the producing country to make my stash for the year, basically. And then I would smoke it on the beach. So the whole approach I have, it's very much based on experience I've had during those 18 years in producing country.
Yeah, you've had I learned when I was taking your class, you've had a chance to travel to all different kinds of places where they do, kind of the more ancient methods of hash making, and you actually teach that in some of your classes as well. Do you want to talk about some of the different countries and maybe some of the differences between them in terms of method?
Like dry sieving is dry sieving. So there is a definition of the word sieving that imply a lot. And they have different tech. The Lebanese is pretty much very different, but the base is the same. When you sieve, you try to reach a higher purity of whatever you're sieving by separating by size through perforation. So it's really basic. It's old. The oldest archaeological find is 100,000 years old. So we have been sieving for at least 100,000 years. Like as soon as we started to separate chaff from grain and seeds, we started sieving. And it's just been a slow evolution since. And what I teach, when I teach dry sieving, I would really love to be able to have the people actually experience the dry sieving so that they can really understand that when we use water, we are still sieving, but water is a true evolution in a methodology that is thousand and thousand years old, and it's a big deal.
So what would you say are the primary differences between dry sieving and water hash? I know the water hash you can get it a little bit cleaner, right?
But when you dry sieve, your handicap is working with a brittle material because you need to agitate that material to break away the resin head from the stock, okay? And in producing country, the quality is totally defined by, quality is totally defined by the cleanliness of the resin. Like the first shake is super light. So that's your first quality. Then you take the trim again and you shake them a little harder. So that you create contaminant. That's your second grade. And so on and so on and so on. When you use water, you can rehydrate the material so that there is no way you can create contaminant except by crushing the material with the ice you're using to make the water cold. But beyond that, the beauty of the water in a methodology, dry sieving is made of two processes inside one methodology that you cannot separate. You agitate your material to break the resin head at the same time that you separate on a sieve material through this perforation. So there is really two processes in one methodology. When you use water, you can separate those two processes that you couldn't before. And then you can fine-tune the agitation and in a bag. That's the magic of it. That's the beauty of bringing the water into sieving resin.
Awesome. And I learned that especially in your class too, about how do you want to talk about gland maturity when it comes to the right kind of hat?
Give me a second.
No problem. Yeah.
The dog.
Tend to your critters there, buddy. No worries.
We are critter friendly on this show.
Oh yes, we love our critters. We use
I
lots
love my
of different...
dogs more than I love most human beings. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Some of us are
likewise.
Although I do have to admit, occasionally I like keeping a human as a pet.
Collar and everything. All right.
Okay, I should be good.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
Oh no worries.
No
No,
problem,
life
buddy.
happens.
The new member of the family, and the dog has 4 months. We have him for 2 months. He already ate 4 pieces of ash, like stone. He was so out of it. So now I have to be super careful not to have any piece of ash falling on the ground or so, because the other one is coming like straight to it.
Oh man.
Can you blame him?
What can I say?
I mean, when he lives at your house, I mean, I do the same thing. I'll be honest with you.
No,
So
the
you have
first
a
time
dog.
actually,
You have a dog
when I
eating some of the
moved my
finest hash in the world.
workspace.
You
He could
have a
have
dog eating some of the finest hash in the world, huh?
and find some piece behind the furniture, and now he's looking for it.
Well, you know what it is. If you keep him on a leash, you could just use, whenever you lose, you're running low, you could just grab the dog and find some more.
Probably make a good dog at the airport now.
I used to have a roommate that used to hide
Yeah,
like little half-gram bags.
you
Used to have a roommate who used to hide little half-gram bags of weed all over the house, and I'd go cleaning, so that when he'd run out, he'd have little stashes, and I'd go cleaning, and I'd find like 1/8 of weed in little half-gram bags in the house. It was really funny. So do you want to talk to people about how to, gland head ripeness on it? That was something I learned a lot about. You had a really interesting take on that.
It's like when I came here to the States, I've learned a lot in producing country, But those people, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, but they don't have the science behind that knowledge. It's something that was given to them. And it's something that they understand the value of it, but they cannot explain the why behind. If you tell them, why do you dry and keep the plant 6 to 9 months in a room in the dark to cure the plant? Actually, they can't explain you the cure, but they know that the resin would be better once it's cured. You know what I mean? And they understand the condition of curing. So it's like when you experience resin transformation on a daily basis for a year, there is things that I cannot explain, but I know it's happening. And I am in a position where I needed to find the science behind what I learned to be able to comprehend better. And the first thing that I realized is I'm a craftsman. And to be a craftsman, there is two things in your life. There is the product you're working with and the tool that you're using to do whatever you want, you need to do with that product. And the product defines the tool. I knew the tool from all those experience in producing country, but I didn't know the product at all. I had never seen a resin head in my life. I never looked at a plant with a magnifying glass. So it's like I had a lot of knowledge, but without having the foundation for it. That means I was ignorant. While I was good at what I was doing, I was ignorant of everything that could bring me to a higher level of manufacturing, for a better word. And because I use water, I don't need anymore to constrain myself, my quality to the cleanliness of the resin. My resin is clean from my first wash to the 15th. But now, how do I find the melt? How do I find the ripeness? Because the melt, it's the amount of resin that is formed inside the resin head. That means how ripe your resin head is. And the research that really helped me was some scientific paper written to try to find a way to stop the cannabis plant to produce cannabis. And in it, they had a description of the resin head, and it shows that the resin head has an abscission under its belly. And then when I check what is an abscission, actually, I didn't really know what it was. It defines how a fruit and a leaf are made and separate from the body that produce them. That means that a resin head at maturity is going to fall when it's ripe. So then, instead of seeing little resin head on the plant and trying to guess by the size or the color, I'm looking at a tree. And when I look at a tree, the best way to define ripeness, it's not by the color of the fruit or by the size of the fruit. Or you need to get close to it to be able to touch and smell, or even simpler, everything that is on the ground is the ripest of the ripest. And then, if I shake the tree just a tiny bit, I have the ripest fruit falling down. And then I shake a tiny bit more, and I have a second dimension of ripeness. And a third time and a fourth time until there is no fruit on my tree anymore. And I have like maybe 7 to 15 dimension of ripeness. And in this ripeness, I find the ripest of the ripest. And to the point where I can tell you to the day how early or how late you are harvested. But the thing is, I reach a point where 2 weeks before harvest time, there is cannabinoid inside the resin head that I collect, but there is no resin formed inside that resin head. Even if you rosin it, there is nothing coming out. And the closer you come to the peak of the flower, the heavier the resin head are and the more resin there is in it. So it's super easy to really define how close you are to the full potential of your resin head or how far away. And when you go into the other side, when you go into overripe, my first check, which should be the best, is not the best anymore. It's like you can see that it had potential, but there is a transformation, there is degradation. It's not your best dimension of ripeness anymore. It's going to come into the second or third check.
Right. Once it starts turning amber, you're decaying. THC is decaying at that point. Yeah.
No, actually, at 80% of amberness, the resin head is still producing cannabinoid with no degradation.
There's no, I thought you just said there was degradation. Okay, I misunderstood you. Sorry.
But at the same time, I have seen plants that were regenerated who never gave amber. And I've seen plants at 3 weeks old, at 3 weeks flower time, they already produce milk. So there is so much diversity in that plant that there is no rule. There is only exception. But as a hash maker, it's more in the amberness in general that I find my quality.
So Frenchy, let me ask you something. Is this kind of the foundation of why what you make is so much better than what I make? And I take great care.
No,
I go in, you know, and I only take the heads with my solvent. I only take the heads off like you do. But you're able to separate it far more than I can in a solvent.
No, because collecting resin is very easy. What really makes the difference is the breeder and the grower. It's like when I travel the world, nobody cares very much that I personally made the hash. But where did I go to make the hash? That was important. It's like, how deep do you go in a producing place? How high do you go in a mountain to make your hash? That's the value of the resin. Like in India, if you go and make charas at 2,000 feet in a valley, yeah, you make good stuff. But if you walk and you go to 9,000, 10,000 feet, that's a different ball game altogether. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not who made it. It's where it grew. It's the terroir, it's the land, it's the power of the climate and the power of the genetic. And here in California, on top of that, I had to add the dedication and the knowledge of the farmer. And that's what gives me the quality I'm showing. It's not me. That quality is given to me. It's like I'm like a winemaker. You don't give me the right grape, I'm not going to give you a great wine.
Well, it's like if they gave you some grapes and they gave me some grapes, I'm going to sell my bottle so I get a bus ticket to come over to your house and help you drink yours. And because what I noticed, like I took a lot of time to get the very gentle, light terpene stuff off the top, and I used this, you know, the solvents like I do, and I did several solvents to take the terpenes out without breaking them, and then later on to go get the THC out. But it sounds like from what you're saying that even if we both got the same grapes, your methodology gives you, like you said, 15 varieties of quality out of one plant. I'm left with, I can do 2 or 3 washes, you know, based on time, temperature, and pressure, take different stuff off if I'm dealing polar or not. I'm just hearing you can separate out a bag of stuff. I just never even have that separation because my solvent just is not as refining as your methodology.
You're going in solvent, it's another dimension because me as a hash maker, I get the grape. Let's compare to wine, okay? I take the grape and I crush that grape and create something else. But in that, when I crush, I don't take only the juice. I don't extract the juice and do something with the juice. I crush everything together. And then there is a chemical reaction happening. and that chemical reaction happening give me something that is greater than what I collected. That's where I really do something, where I can say, Frenchy, I made it because I gave that transformation. I create something that is bigger than what was given to me by my farmer. But you don't do that. And me, I still have that entourage effect that I don't lose. I have that wholeness of the resin. You go into a domain where you extract the juice of it and you can create an amazing amount of different products to the point of giving 100% almost pure cannabinoid or terpene. And then you go into the Western medicine dimension. You know what I mean? It's like your territory is vast and it's way beyond what a hash maker can bring to the table because you tweak and you go beyond the plant. You take from the plant and then by dissolving, there is a huge transformation and you leave behind what created that resin. And that for me, it's a step I don't want to take because I want to keep everything together because my wholeness is greater. And
yeah, well, it tastes greater. Where I see that, comes up is, standard, let's say the most common is like ethanol extraction. And the ethanol, if you're using, 200 proof pure ethanol and you're going to, pull the stuff out of the plant, it's so damn close to some of these very, very delicate terpenes that are the most effervescent. I don't know all the medical stuff with it, but oh my God, the taste is phenomenal. And even though, I start out with a different solvent so that I don't break it, every time, no matter how you do the process and you're having to use that ethanol wash to either de-wax or something like that, there are terpenes that just don't survive it. And I can tell this because even if I highly distill to recover the ethanol, guaranteed I'm going to have terpenes in that highly refined ethanol. Those molecules are so close. And what I hear is you don't lose any of that. That's still on your palate where you can then mix.
It's in my water, okay? So now, because everything is formed inside the resin head, even the terpenes are formed inside the resin head. What comes from the stock, it's a precursor of terpene. Then it's stored in the underbelly of the resin head in that little rosetta shape. It transforms into terpene and then it sips inside the main chamber of the resin head. There it binds with the phenol and all those enzymes, and it creates, through synthase, it creates different cannabinoids. When it does that, there is a second pocket in the resin head, separated by a membrane. Slowly, the cannabinoids that are formed are seeping through that membrane and filling up that second chamber. And that second chamber slowly get bigger and bigger because it fills up with cannabinoid formed. So when you break away the resin head from the stock, everything is in your resin head. All the terpene, soluble, water soluble or not, they're inside that resin head. What is seeping in the water, we don't know, but I believe that is those precursors of terpenes that are seeping, or whatever is leaking from the underbelly of the resin head, which is not the terpene I want. The terpene I want are locked inside. It's when that membrane is broken that then I lose. Sam the Skunk Man had the best logical explanation for that smell outside what I say that membrane let water seep through, and because the water seeps through, the terpene would have a way out. I don't know the science behind that, but yeah, that would make sense. But now it's like me, what I want, do trim for trim with me. You do dry sieve, I do water, and then we check with lab test. Not like I taste, I know it tastes better. It's like all that bullshit, ice water, ash tastes like shit. Like, let's do trim for trim with serious lab test. And then we talk. Really, do I lose something? Because I want to know what is the best tech. It's like, I don't care if it's mine. I don't want to lose terpene. I want to pick up that wellness, and I want to learn the best way to do it. It's simple. It doesn't go much further than that. And the rest, I don't really care. I care for for the stuff I love the most. It's collecting resin and make hash in the best way possible that can reflect the best possible way the genetic is made from. And that was the trip at the beginning with aficionado. It's like the hash represent the genetic. It's the final expression of the plant. It's the bloody history. The book of our life is inside that resin head.
So with that note, what is your opinion on, I know some people like to take their plants right after they harvest them and run bubble immediately to try and do like a live resin or a live rosin or something similar to that. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that changes anything? And then is there a difference between curing the resin heads, say on the plant for 6 to 9 months versus collecting them immediately off and then curing them after? And is that anything you've tried or?
Yes, I mean, it's something not I have tried, but I have experience. That's in producing country. You have country who do hashish. Hashish is made from plants that have been dried and cured minimum 6 to 9 months. And then you have India, where you collect live resin on your hand. It's charas, and it's two different products. So when you have live resin, you have the peak of the plant at the end of her life when she expresses the maximum. When you dry and cure, you're going to lose 80% of your terp. But the terps that stay transform in a way they're polymer bound. It's called the polymerization. And at the end of the day, you have a different terpene profile that is not similar to the live resin and is far away from just dried flower. Okay? And now, what is the best? Well, personally, when I set feet in India, I spent 8 years in my life making charas, and I didn't go back in a hash producing country. But if I take the example of the Pinot Noir from Aficionado, I rather have it cured because it makes hash that tastes like chocolate than live. Live, it's nice, but it's something that I have experienced before. It's like a field of flower with a hint of lavender of it. Very much, smell very much like Provence, like the south of France. But I rather smoke the milk chocolate ash cured than the live resin. So it really depends. And what is the best? It's a question of taste. It's not the same experience, mental, body. It's just different product. You cannot compare. They're both great, and it's the two peak of what the plant can give you. Dried and cured perfectly, or just live.
So what is your I lost my train of thought on that one. I'll think of it in a second. Oh, here. I have a thing here. Oh, so some of us you and I have the pleasure of experiencing charas. Do you want to explain to people what charas is? Because not everybody out there knows what charas is, especially because I've only seen it once in the States, and it was when a Pakistani fellow happened to share some with me. So
charas, it's collecting resin on the palm of your hand is most certainly the oldest tech to collect resin from the cannabis plant. It's hardly used anymore in hash producing country like Morocco, Lebanon, Afghanistan, Pakistan, but it's still practiced. Like often if the kids at the beginning before harvesting, or if they want a little change, they still do it, but it's not like India, Nepal, Bhutan, where the climatic condition defines the technique that you have to use to collect resin. It's too humid in this country to be able to do dry sieve. So it stayed the best tech to collect resin. And it's quite simple. Huh? You take off the biggest fan leaf with your fingernails, and you caress gently the bud up and down, once or twice, super lightly, without trying to break any leaf matter. Because if you bring leaf matter, you not only you put chlorophyll in your on your resin on your hand, but you put water there too, and water is bad. You cannot have sweaty hands. You cannot have oily hands. That's you cannot make charas if you have oily hand or if you sweat easy. It's going to be a big disadvantage because it's really hot in the field, and to keep the resin sticky, you need to avoid anything that is oil or water. So it's a big waste, because you collect maybe 20% of the resin, 30% max. But it's done in the Himalaya, where cannabis rule was maybe like it's one of the potential birthplace of cannabis. So, and it's everywhere in the mountain. So there is not that mentality of trying to maximize the production of a plant. You just collect.
Can you harvest more than one time? Like, can you rub the plants? Do the trichomes like regenerate or anything?
They do to a point, but how early do you want to do that? I mean, I know in Jamaica they do it 3 times full power.
Yeah, I was
But
just
then
going
your
to say.
first time, when are you doing it?
I'm
You
just
know what I mean? There is only one time in the life of the plant when the resin is perfect. It's that peak of harvest. That's it. That's the time you want it. Everything else is like milking for milking, but it's like, when do you smoke?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's so much variation in genetics and stuff like that, and I'm curious about what do you think is because I feel like there's obvious differences even in texture. You can feel that some resin is very oily, and I'm talking about at harvest time, and other resin is very sticky. It varies so much genetically, and the stalks themselves, the trichomes, some are very low lying, and the resin balls, as you're calling them, are very small. Other ones the stalks are very tall and they sit very high on the leaf. There's so much infinite variation.
When you look at different flowers, you see the difference between, you can recognize flower, and there is a huge difference between a sativa and an indica. A sativa in the Himalaya, they grow tall and linky, and there is no dust, there is no wind, there is a huge insect life. That means that the resin create characteristic according to its habitat, according to the climate and the region where it lives. The feet of the Himalaya and the Hindu Kush touch. When you go in the Hindu Kush, it's super dry, super windy, super dusty. So the plant cannot grow high, they stay low. They compensate by making wider leaves to be able to process as much light. And a resin that needed to be sticky in the Himalaya because there is so much insect life, in the Hindu Kush, where there is no life, but there is a lot of dust that would collect on the resin head and hamper all the functions that is necessary to the plant. The plant is not create a resin that is as sticky as the sativa in the Himalaya. That means that you can literally recognize genetic by its resin. There is that much characteristic to it. And you can recognize the amount of breeding one way or the other by its characteristic, from sandy to oily, sticky, melty. It's all part of what the plant need to be to rule our kingdom.
That's incredible. That's amazing. I have one more question about the mechanics of the resin gland itself. Like you were describing, as though the resin gland itself has almost a some kind of a cell around it or something that protects it. Do you think that that's result of the polymerization of the oil, the sort of the oil that's exposed to the air sort of creates a shell of its own because of that, or is there some other physical containment?
Or during the day when the resin head are exuding the terpene to do whatever the plant want to do, like the terpene are a mean to rule the kingdom. That means that those terpenes, they can attract insect, reject insect, kill other plants. They rule their place. Everything is ruled by the plant on top and underground. And during the day, they exude those terpene. It's strong. At night, it cut down. That's why it's better to harvest around 3-4 o'clock in the morning, where all the terpene are locked inside. That exudation, it's like, it's not it's part of what you receive when you harvest the plant during the day. And it's almost something you should avoid in a certain, if you could. It's best to harvest before daylight, so that the plant is holding everything in. It's like the terpene is a tool for the plant. It's like smell can drive human crazy. Terpene rules the insect world, and we feel them. Everything that a plant used to rule the world, it was first the insect world. And our nervous system is wired like the insect, basically. So everything, it's like it came back to us. It wasn't created for us, but we are part of a chain of evolution that is dependent on our health to a certain point to that plant at an amazing level. Give me a second.
No worries.
Boy, this guy is fantastic.
I vote if he ever wants to come back, we let him come back.
I just wanted to, while he's away, his next workshop is in Barcelona on March 8th. You can look him up on frenchycannoli.everbright.com. And then his next San Francisco class is on March 24th. In fact, you can actually take the next one-day cannabis class if you want to do aquaponic cannabis the day after. So you can come take Frenchy's class and then on Saturday and then mine on Monday.
I'm at for 420. I will upload the whole workshop on YouTube for free for everybody to access in 4 parts with subtitles. And it was done like that one. It's not showing what I do. This is the workshop one-on-one. I did it in front of the camera for the person who's going to watch, not something that was filmed during a workshop. I wanted something much more intimate. I wanted really to be able to look personally at the guy on the screen when they were going to look at that workshop, so that they have my full attention. It's not something picked up in a workshop where I worry about the identity of my attendees, because not of them want to be on a video, and also I don't want to change that atmosphere, that intimacy that you create with that specific group. It's special. Every group is different. And it's not something that I can really truly use to teach one guy separately on the screen. I really wanted to separate it and to give something specific for the online access, so that people have the full experience with all the detail, except the wall ranting while I wait for the machine to spin. It cut down, but it's still going to be a 4 hours part. It's going to be cut into a 4 part of 1 hour.
Awesome. That's really, really cool. So, well, do you want to? I'll let you tend to him if you need. Do you want to explain to people? You had a great explanation. I think it was on Hash Church on hash plants versus ganja plants, and I thought maybe you could touch on that again, because they're very completely different, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a difference between the two.
But you have to think that all the genetics that have been used to breed what we have been breeding in the Western world come from landrace. And those landrace, there is an evolution through thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, at least over 10,000 of years of evolution of those plants in those specific country under specific condition and production. That means that those plants slowly, season after season, the female that the seeds were collected from were chosen. It's not any seeds from any female. And for the male, the same. The males that stay in the field to pollinate the field are not any male. It's the best males that grow in the field. And that is that makes that created genetics that are totally adapted to hashish production and the producing country, like the Lebanese in Lebanon. Those plants stay small and even grown in other country after 30 season year, a Lebanese plant will stay small. They don't grow tall, and they hash producing. But it's like it's really the terroir in its full meaning that created what we call hash plant or charas plant. It's really the land, the climate, the genetic, and the know-how of the farmer. That's the terroir. That's what creates uniqueness. And you cannot duplicate it. You can play around with it in foreign countries through breeding, but you can't mimic it. You can't mimic a terroir. It's like it's not possible. There is two science on soil itself. There is a science of the soil formation, and there is a science of how the soil define the microbial life that is inside it and that give life to the plant. So it's like the soil is a big deal. The soil is the shaper, is the giver of life. And the climate is the shaper of that life. It gives shape and color to that life. You can't put that in a pot. There is no indoor terroir. There is only real true terroir, the land. Everything else is part of the terroir, like a greenhouse. You may use, even if you put it directly in the ground, and it's an open greenhouse, it's still not the terroir. It's like that plant is not going to be the pure expression of that specific place. You know what I mean? And that's what makes the difference between products. That's why you have like farmers that can produce stuff that only the Grand Chef Michelin would buy, and you have the stuff that is made in such quantity that you have no way to know where it's coming from.
I like to explain to people that terroir is what makes your phenome a phenome and not the genome. The interaction between the terroir and the genome is what your difference in phenomes are, and that expression. Is that a good explanation
That's
of it?
The phenotype. The phenotype is
like
partly
humanity.
and partly the
We
environment.
we have all the same ancestor. It's very simple. So what gives us that diversity but the land and the food that is grown on that land? I'd like to know, because there is only one race, the human race, Homo sapiens. The other one we destroyed a long time ago. So it's like,
Yep.
where does all that diversity is coming from? But for the land that is made of diversity, diversity is the name of the game. Diversity is survival.
Yep.
Yeah,
What's
we
your,
can't trump that.
what's
We
your
depend
person?
on we eat so many. I mean, that's what the human race is kind of the big omnivore of the planet, you know. So we can't really easily afford, you know. We are kind of in many ways dependent on so many parts of the planet for food. We eat everything.
No, but we are even dependent on the air we
Especially
breathe.
these French guys, you guys really eat everything.
That has 500 million years of evolution on us. A living organism that is aware and intelligent enough to conquer the planet and have every mobile being doing what they do, what they want them to do. It's like human being, it's only a pollinator after all, if you look at it on the planet wide. You know what I mean? And we're not doing such a great job lately.
So what is Frenchie's favorite hash? If you could just smoke one type of hash, what type of hash would you smoke?
Oh, that's a bad question. Yeah. Not with the choice I have now.
Or maybe even top three. That would work.
It's like if I had to smoke only one hash, would be jungle from the Parvati Valley in India. I have grown at 10,000 feet. I would give anything to be able to smoke that. Only, even like the best strain from aficionado and the best banana, bananji, tangy, you name them all. The charas, jungle charas from Tosh and Actang in the Parvati Valley. That would be my choice after all. It's funny, go back to old school.
I'll
Now,
have to
can
find
I
a way to get to
find
that
that on
valley.
weed maps or on Leafy?
Sorry?
Can I find that on weed maps or on Leafy?
You know, if you want that, you need to go there. And even
Yeah.
now, it's not the same. Like when in 1980, the first time I was there, you needed to walk a good day walk to get to the end of the valley, and then another few hours in a jungle to do the jungle. Now you have a road going there, so it's not quite the same. The Malana Valley, everything has changed. They built 7 dams. It's places that were really the end of the world, where you didn't see a living being for months. Now it's full of tourism, rave party, and shit like that.
In other words, that ship is sailed.
You just have to go further.
Yeah. That ship has sailed, Tommy. Yeah. That's interesting, though. Yeah, you have to go back here and traipse through the jungle for a day and a half to get this shit. You know, that's pretty awesome. You know.
No, but I live in cave for months. I mean, it's like in India, to do the stuff I wanted to have, you need to go out of your way. Huh? There is everything you need to carry yourself. There is no food. There is nothing there. And even the local, like, have you ever heard of Malana cream? It's Malana, it's a small valley in the middle of nowhere in the Himalaya, a small village where you cannot touch the people because they are of the highest caste. They're supposed to be descendants of Alexander the Great. It was the last democracy on earth. And when I was there, it was a kind of not so secret anymore place to get the best of the best. Like in the Himalaya, in northern India, there is the first things I learned in my first year. You have the jungle grown at the end of the Parvati Valley, and the cultivated field, you would go to Malana Valley. And that's what I did. And for 7 seasons in a row. But the cultivated is not quite the same than the wild cannabis. Wild cannabis, depending where it grows, it picks up the characteristic of the land. It's like I had patches of cannabis growing in wild strawberries. The stuff like the ash, the charas tasted like strawberries. And every patches that grow into some type of under nut bushes or under specific trees, it really captures the terpene profile of the plant that dominate that
the fruit
opening in the jungle where the plant grows.
Wow, that's interesting, because I've had a lot of people ask me about that stuff, and I really hadn't done a lot of experimentation, although I had a greenhouse where I grew a bunch of peppers, and I wondered at times about that, because I did, allegedly possibly add a couple of plants in my greenhouse there. But that's interesting that you find that if they're under a nut plant or a nut or a bush or whatever, it takes on the terpenes of the other vegetable or fruit.
So
To tell you the truth, I thought it was kind of a placebo effect that we had, imagining that it tasted like it. And then learning more about the plant, it seems that the plant is picking up the terpene, the main terpene profile of its habitat to fit into it and maximize its potential, I imagine. I'm not sure. But like the strawberry kush the strawberry cup from Cal Cushman is supposed to be a plant that has grown for generations in the field of strawberries.
What do you think about grapes, about intercropping with grapes? We have a lot of them here in California. You were saying terroir.
There is not enough space for a plant to grow well between the vine. And the vine, they have some serious roots under that. You know what I mean? They rule. They're underground. It will be difficult for a plant to grow in without damaging the root system of the vine, just to make the space for it.
I was just thinking, because there was a dispute, I think it was in southern Oregon, was the neighbors were wine grape growers, and the guys wanted to start a cannabis farm, and the wine guys were complaining that they were trying to prevent them from growing cannabis, saying that it was going to affect their wine crop. And I was thinking, wow, you guys should cash in and combine share your land, grow together, and both brag that your grapes are intercropped with cannabis and that your cannabis is intercropped with grapes. I thought, maybe you might have to make more space between the rows, like you said. But
no, not even. It's like the cannabis cannot affect the whole characteristics that the grape is speaking it. She's speaking it from the soil, and not even from the soil, from the microbial life that is in the soil. That's what defines what you get into the wine. It's not the soil. It's the same with the cannabis plant. It's those microbes that break nutrients that feed the plant. They're really giving food to the plant. They're creating everything that goes into that plant. They're the ones that really gave those characteristics. So you can't really change that. That's the soil. That's those two science of the soil together that gave that power to the plant. So the smell of cannabis next to the grape is not going to change the characteristic of the wine at the end of the day. That's really not being very knowledgeable of what you're doing.
Hey, I just wanted to introduce you to something since you brought it up. Well, I'd like to introduce you to a Strawberry Kush clone right here.
Oh.
Here's a Strawberry Kush clone. Just happen to have one or two, allegedly.
And I have not tried many breedings that were really interesting with it. It's like everything that I have tried was okay, but not great, except for one that Bud and Roses did, the Star Dog and the Strawberry Cuff together. If I had to breed her, I would breed with some type of chem. It looks like they have certain affinities also.
Awesome.
Isn't Girl Scout cookie has the Durban poison on the and cherry pie or something like that? Crossed with the
many story to that one.
yeah.
Whatever it's like, it's as much as I don't really like the plant because I was expecting the Durban, and Durban is one of my favorites. I don't like the flower much, but it makes some amazing hash, I have to say. And a lot of this of what it was breeded with Girl Scout cookies show how much power there is in that plant. I mean, it's like for that I have to say we all have to say thank you to the breeder because that's a nice addition to the toolbox of a lot of breeders.
You know, the Durban poison is great. I have a friend from Durban that brought me, some of the genetics from down there. So I have a really, and my Oreo plant is 50% Durban poison, and that one has very oily resin. And I figure, I haven't had it tested, but I'm sure it has a lot of THCV. It's extremely up, and it suppresses appetite. And it's like a shot of espresso, don't even smoke it at night, if you expect to chill out, you might have a bad episode, racing thoughts and stuff like that. But
and
it
has a strong hallucinogenic side also that most people don't like.
Yeah, that Durban poison thing is very it's very different. It's a really unusual, some people have had bad episodes on it because whatever I crossed it with is pretty high in THC, and so it's it's kind of potent but still very racy and sativa-ish in effects, which can be unexpected. People don't expect that. It's a rare thing, you don't find it much.
And I've not smoked. Like I had a friend from Durban who gave me some Durban poison a long time ago, and I can remember clearly the buzz and the taste of it because I had never tasted something so yummy in my life. But at that time, I had never smoked much flower. And the other really strong flower that I smoked before coming here was a Thai stick, looking really nothing very impressive. And the stuff was powerful, but like people don't want to smoke with you, literally. And I have not smoked something that strong since.
Yeah, Thai stick is definitely the one time I smoked true Thai stick, it knocked me out. Yeah. I was tripping all night.
Yeah, it's very basic, very tripping. Tripping is exactly right.
I was going to work. I worked a graveyard shift at my job, and on my way out, my roommate had friends drop in from California, and on the way down, he goes, well, hit this. I said, what is it? He goes, just some Thai stick. I said, okay. I'd never smoked it before. I was probably about 19 or 20, you know, and I took a couple hits, and I got in the car and I drove down the street, and I took a right, and I drove about a quarter mile to the stoplight where I had to take a right to go down the highway to get to my job. And I realized I sat through like 2 or 3 green lights. You know, soon it's like I felt fine until I hit the brakes to stop at the stoplight, and then it was like, whoa, and I just, yeah, I mean, yeah, I got to admit that's true. It's, if you haven't got to smoke true Thai stick, I tell you what, that was a treat. That was a treat. That was back in the late 70s, late 70s. See, that was
like a friend who's a Vietnam vet, or a couple of friends, but one who's and he says that his theory is that, because I know there's the legend or the stories in upstate California that genetics were brought back by various Vietnam vets from Vietnam, and there might be some Vietnamese genetics in Northern California, but my friend, this one Nam vet friend, says that he thinks that a lot of the genetics that guys brought back from Vietnam was actually Thai. That they were actually, that a lot of what they were getting, what they were even smoking in Vietnam was probably grown in Thailand. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
I think it grows all over the place over there, but
Frenchy in Cambodia, most certainly, but it grows in Vietnam too. It's all over.
Yeah. It's not.
But he was suggesting that the Thai was higher quality, and if the guys had brought back the really good stuff from Vietnam, that it would have been the Thai. That's what he was saying.
Yeah.
Going back to the Durban, one of my best strains, in fact, the one that's the splat screen for the show before we go live, is actually a Durban Poison Island Sweet Skunk hybrid that was the best tasting I've ever grown.
Dude, Island Sweet
the
Skunk,
best taster.
Island Sweet Skunks though is basically the only thing I've ever smoked that made me jealous, dude. I was like, dude, what? Whoever knocked that shit out, man. Oh man, am I jealous. I've actually tried to kind of fix that quality a couple of times. I swear I've gotten there with close to that taste a few times and pursued it on at least 2 different occasions. So, when it has that purple haze, man, too. It makes a haze in the room, right? You blow out the hit, and you got to be actually smoking a blunt, and it hangs in the room, and it's actually blue, right? And it lingers, and if you go out of the room and come back in, the smell is so amazing. Anyone else coming in the room goes, "Wow, what were you guys smoking? Wow, what is that?" And it's like a boomerang. You go out the door so you can experience coming back in. It's called the boomerang effect. It's like, oh boy, wow, it smells great again. The room smells beautiful.
When you smell different flower and you have you smell some coffee in between to clean your nose, it's the same.
It's the same. Well, it's a hybrid. It's that Island Sweet Skunk. It's got a lot of sativa in it, but it seems like you get that around 2nd or 3rd generation after the hybridization, and you're still inbreeding. You start getting those amazing blends, but then a lot of times it's hard to nail them down after those first couple of generations after the cross between these 2 unrelated, an indica and a sativa. And that's exactly how I've nearly chased down that smell before. So when I smelled Island Sweet Skunk, when I tried it, I was like, you fuckers. I tried that twice and I failed,
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
Mind-blowing.
How much there is behind
I recognize
breeding.
Huh? I'm just saying
how much breeding. It's like to hunt a certain characteristic and being able to lock it down.
Yes.
It's
takes you have to set something in mind and keep it in mind a long period of time. It's a pain. It's heavy lifting. It's a real pain. But it's incredibly rewarding. If people say that, people say, well, smoking cannabis is not addicting, but growing is addicting. Well, breeding is beyond addicting. It actually becomes a responsibility, which is why I began literally giving genetics away years and years ago, because you start realizing that, cannabis seeds don't last that long. And every time even, plants are so variable, even if it's just incredible. So there's all these different pathways and different, directions to go, and you have to make choices. So at a certain point, you want to give the seeds to your friend. You say, hey, look, I'm not ever going to get around to this project. You do that right away. And I've been doing it all ever since.
Jean, Min Jean from Mendocino, gave me the most simple and beautiful explanation of breeding. He was explaining us breeding. It's like, imagine a highway with 30 line of car, and every type of car, every color, every mark. And at the end of the day, when you have only one line, you need to have only one color, one brand. And every time you breed, you take a line out. And slowly, you get to the red Mustang. And that's all you get, it's a red Mustang. And if there is anything more than that red Mustang, somewhere in a line, it wasn't perfect, you have to backtrack to get back to where you want to go. I mean, it's a very simplified version of it, but that's basically it.
You can make continuous improvements over time if you work towards open pollination, if you work towards if you start including as many plants as possible early on, and progeny testing. But what I was saying about the island sweet skunk was that it seemed to me in other breeding plans that I had used that kind of combination of smell and flavor only happened at certain generations, at certain points after a cross. And so I was amazed, and I was really impressed that they were able to literally nail that down, and maybe it was by merciless backcrossing cubing of a select plant. Maybe it was a simple method like that, and it happened to work. A lot of times it doesn't. Maybe they lucked out in someone.
Skunk, it's like that. The breeding was minimal at that level. The guy just a jackpot. Sometimes you just nail down something because it fit. And other plants to get the same, you would have to go to a F7, F9 with a huge cross-pollination at the beginning to get the same result.
Yeah.
No, it's like me, I feel bad because all my life I've not known the plant. I've understood only the resin. And I started to even just look at the flower when I started to be with Minjin and Leo and Swami and like breeder and grower who have a deep knowledge of the flower. Then I started to learn about it. For me, my knowledge was everything was the resin. The flower is just what holds the resin. It's for the goat. Literally, like in India and most producing country, all that goes to the goat. Once you shake it, that's it. So I feel bad because I have seen some amazing genetic that I didn't know what I was looking at. It's a shame to have been so ignorant with such a treasure in front of me and having no clue.
Well, your skill actually, as you said before, depends quite a bit on the genetics. It's not a method that uses up a lousy product and or something that people can't. It's much better to take prime flower for you to work with, obviously, just like a great wine grower, you know.
It's the same thing
And
with
also-
new growers and people that want to be successful growing. It's all about getting great genetics in the first place. And I love that you did mention that earlier, Frenchy. It all starts with the genetics. I loved it. I didn't want to interrupt you. You were on a roll at the time, but yeah, I'm glad Mr. Green Jeans brought that up because it's all about the genetics, and you go from there, and you can do whatever you want.
Also, look at how you're having strain extinction. Look at how basically anything that's over 8 weeks and 10 weeks is being not grown anymore because of the way the commercial industry, with California being an exception, Oregon being a little bit of an exception, but a large part of the commercial industry, especially indoor and greenhouse, is moving to these turn and burn strains. You're also moving away from stinky strains. You're not seeing skunk #1. You're not seeing some of these really stinky strains that have very unique terpene profiles and cannabinoid profiles because it means they have to spend more on odor mitigation. So you're actually seeing the commercial market steering some of these cannabinoid and terpene profiles without realizing it because of what they're trying to get away from for commercial reasons, which is a shame, and why we need to actually go back and look at some of these other strains. There could be medicinal compounds or higher levels of compounds we're after in some of these strains that don't necessarily fit that commercial model, and that's really what's a shame with what's going on right now on the genetic end of the industry.
I still like the older strains for that reason too, because like you said, in fact, that's funny. You just mentioned my favorite strains, skunk #1. That, if I could have if somebody could give me some of that, I'd be very happy. I can't get any of that.
Well, we have the cut. Soon you can come and see me. We are bringing it up. We have the 1986 skunk #1 cut.
That's funny. That's funny you say that, Roger, because the 3 plants that I just started in my new grow are all original skunk #1 re-veg clones.
Yeah, I love that. I love it.
I have to go. I'm in the Bay Area. I gotta go pick one up from Frenchy.
If I was going to breed, I would have to have one of those. To me, that would have to be in your stable. You'd have to have a skunk #1 if you're going to breed. That I think.
Yeah, but very few people have it. No, the breeding, people should worry because how is it possible for a plant that has the best epigenetic memory in a plant kingdom still having problem with mite and mildew and stuff like that, like generation after generation? It shouldn't be. The plant is supposed to be able to transform its own DNA so that the next generation can deal with the problem. So if you're breeding and you still have those huge problems, how come? I have never seen that in a producing country. So because of prohibition, all the breeding has been focused in one direction. There is no free meal here. If you go one direction, you are losing on the other side. So you may get bigger bud, you may get shorter time, you may get a lot, but you get powdery mildew and a plant that are not healthy enough to make it.
You're making me think that breeding, that's why I think breeding indoors is so good, is because the really important thing for me to do is to remove stress, right? I have to be able to see as much, any kind of stress, even terroir, even the environment is a little bit of stress. I have to remove stress completely.
Exactly the opposite. Leave your plant in the ground in the winter if you want them to become heirloom and know your terroir. That's what I'm telling you. It's like, don't stop eating your genetic. You make it weak. Stop overfeeding. Stop overwatering. Instead of making big fat girl, make Olympic champ, make muscle, not density. You know what I mean? Like you're making your genetic weak. When you breed indoor, it's different.
Get some cherry bomb seeds, brother. You should try some Green Genes genetics.
May become another sativa. It's different. What you bring
my genetics are famously tough. My genetics are famously tough.
Well,
okay. You get,
Yeah, but
you
that's not
and
because
that's-
you're
cherry
breeding
bomb seeds, bro.
them, huh?
Oh no,
My
but here's the deal though. If you're going for resin, the plants actually need that stress. They need the UV exposure. In fact, you were Frenchy. You were just talking about how when you're curing before the show, I brought up something that I had seen in Jamaica, and I was totally wrong on it. And you corrected me about the sun being playing a role in the curing, and even a little bit of photosynthesis post harvest actually made a difference in the resin. You know, I didn't even realize that all those little things played such a role. Let me fix that.
all right.
If you want really genetic, I mean, breeding indoor, it's different because what you breed indoor is going to have a hard time growing outdoor and vice versa. Because you're breeding a plant in a certain habitat, that habitat defines the plant. The food you give, everything defines the next generation. So, yeah, you breed strong plant, but
Not in my experience. My stuff grows outside amazingly.
Well,
I
some
think my
genetics will do
been
better
setting
with.
birds all over the place.
Well, some genetics will, but you're not exposing them to the full. I'll give you a great example of something we learned in aquaponics, and it speaks to Frenchy's point on when you diversify the microbial life in the root zone, such as in a dual root zone, you get actually a stronger microbial resistance. And by even having the plants outside, you're exposing them to more microbes that can then challenge that plant's immune system the same way that like a vaccine or just taking your kid and giving them chickenpox and getting those antibodies is the same kind of thing. The plant needs to build up its immune system, and that is something that I've definitely noticed with some of the indoor strains, particularly with the clone only strains, because those genetics are so much older and because it's been weakened over time. That really it does play a role, especially when you get to NorCal versus SoCal.
Interesting.
I've seen the climate transform plants that were grown, that were cultivated in India. And when you let the plant, the seeds spend the winter in the ground, the plant that grows a year after is not quite the same. And if you do that for a few generations, you have another entity altogether. You have a lot more diversity, a lot more power in a plant. That means that if you, especially when you grow outdoor, if your plant is not adapted to the land and you're a breeder, let a bed of seed in the winter, whatever sprout and thrive after, you want to breed with that because that becomes local. It's like you want to create heirloom genetic. You want to create your own genetics that is adapted to your own habitat. For that, you need to give the power to the plant to do it. You cannot. You don't rule. The plant does. And if you give it key moments that there is a winter, there is season, there is cold on the seeds, it's like a seeds to sprout well, it's better to put it in the fridge. It's like seeds need the cold. A fruit tree needs the cold in the winter to produce more fruit in the summer. It's like that's nature. So if you want to make your genetic strong, you need the help of nature. Indoor breeding, it's another entity altogether. I'm not really sure about what it will do to indoor genetic to do stuff like that because it's you create a specific habitat for
between indoor genetics and outdoor genetics. Everything basically all the genetics that I've bred work really well outdoors unless they're heavily, unless they're have indica traits that keep them kind of small, which can be blended easily with sativa traits. So it's possible to have a very plant which seems and consumes very indica dominant, which is a huge tree. So and which is extremely healthy. I mean, Cherry Bomb, when I was giving it away in the public domain, was at least at generation 15 inbred all the way, and is extremely healthy and vigorous. You know, I mean, like no, no signs of inbreeding degradation whatsoever, but a lot of.
Some strains will do really good, and it's not to say that all of them will, but you know, the majority.
It's strain specific.
Cherry Bomb's phenomenal outdoors. I mean, I don't know. I don't really. Maybe I guess I just you know, I definitely have leaned towards sativa. You know, sativa dominant stuff anyway. So that could be part of it, I suppose. But I've never really had any trouble. I mean, a lot of my stuff is being purchased by guys up in Mendocino right now. And one of the reasons why they like it is because my plants grow so big and so fast and produce so much. You know, high yield is really good for everybody, not just the recreational. And not only high yield, but very tough plants that don't get I don't wimpy genetics. You know, I immediately recognize something that requires a lot of care, you know, that when it comes into my garden, if I get, and this is the reason why a lot of elite clones that have come through, I haven't saved them, is because after I crossed them, I came up with something a lot better that was tougher and higher yielding and a lot of things that the sort of commercial grower would consider better. So I think that's the reason why I've had a lot of success with outdoor commercial growers.
That's why.
Yep. Well,
so have we had any hash related questions coming out of chat tonight? Who do we got in there?
Way to go, Brain Bro. Good job, buddy. Somebody's got to keep up.
I actually had a question on consumption, but the breeding argument was going on so long, I was just like, oh wait. But I had a question that was kind of pertaining to hash consumption, and I can't be 100% sure if y'all covered this while I cut out a couple of times. But say you have your perfect hash that you made right in front of you, Frenchy. Do you prefer to consume that just the way it is, or do you refine that into another type of concentrate, such as rosin or BHO or whatever?
Oh no. For me, hash is the final product.
No.
I have nothing against concentrate, extract. Actually, if I was young, if I was 20, even if I had all the knowledge on hash that I have right now, I would put it on the side and go and learn how to extract. Because for me to be able to do something that the big pharma can't and put it on the market is even more powerful than my little domain of hash making, because it has a bigger impact. So it's like I have an understanding of BHO and CO2 bigger than most, because I was born in the perfume industry, and BHO and CO2 are the best tool to collect the most volatile terpene. So it's like it's an amazing tool to as an extraction. But what I do is not an extraction. I'm making wine. I'm not making a spirit.
Yeah, I got it. You're making hash. You're not doing extractions and using any kind of plastic.
I mostly wanted to ask that question because a lot of folks like to take their hash that they made and press it into rosin or something like that. And that's why I wanted to ask that question mostly.
So it's like it makes for two different products. It's like the hash, when you smoke my hash in general, it's even when it's a little bit on the energetic side, it's that comfortable feeling of warmth, like having a warm blanket on your shoulder in front of a fire and it's snowing outside. When you smoke the rosin made from that ash, you got a big bang, speediness, and a short run. So it's like, it's kind of nice, And in the afternoon, instead of napping or having a coffee, I go and have 2 or 3 dab of rosin, but I don't receive from rosin that feeling of well-being that I have when I smoke hash. So it's like, because it's the juice of the fruit, it's not the fruit. Eating an apple and drinking the juice extracted from the apple, it's still the apple, but it's not quite the same. That's why I'm into that. I'm into the wholeness of the fruit, the wholeness of the resin head, instead of just the juice from it. Because the value of what creates that resin is huge. It's like when you take it off the equation, you just don't have the same product. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's just that it's different entity. And then when you go into extraction, every product is different. You create, like, there is an amazing number of products that are radically different. It's like, it's not only the way you finish and the look, there is some of it, but the experience itself is quite different between a shatter and a honeycomb or a live resin. It's huge. It's like, it's still an extract, but there is a huge difference between them, and that's the beauty of that domain. It's like there's so much to discover.
So on that note, there's a great question in chat. It says, some of the high CBD strains I have tiny trikes, most collected in the 45 to 25 micron range. I'm having a hard time getting the small heads to wash off. What's the best method for removing the small trikes? And on that note too, after that, do you want to talk maybe a little bit on the trike head size on ripeness? Because I learned so much from you on a couple of different talks that you've done on that, and really helped me become a better hash maker.
So it's like the size of the ripeness on a resin head. Basically, it's considered between 70 and 120. Okay, but I don't believe that size define ripeness. Not at all. For me, the size, I mean, yes, the size define ripeness. The bigger they are, the more resin there is in it. The smaller they are, the further they are from pure full ripeness. So the further they are from full ripeness, let's say my 25 micron, in my 25 micron, I got a lot of CBG. CBG is a precursor of CBD and THC. I'm not interested personally into it. But if I give it to an extractor, CBG, it's a hell of a good cannabinoid. It has a lot of medical aspect to it. So it's like, for me, as a hash maker, it's not ripe. I don't care for it. But instead of throwing it away, I collect it so that somebody else can make something with it. Me, I want the ripeness, and my range is 45 to 160, my full spectrum that I don't separate.
So to relate to the question I asked a little bit ago, what is the, in your opinion, preferred method of consuming hash? Do you just throw it in a bowl and smoke it, or is there something else that people should be doing with it?
I smoke it with a pipe that to smoke flower, and I just put ash on top of the flower. I make a kind of a bottom flower to hold the ash, and I put the ash on top of it, and I smoke the ash like that. Or I mix the flower and the ash. You know, flower and ash are very different buzz, very different experience. And mixing them up, it's bon. It's like, for me, a hash maker, flower really kick me seriously. And I like that that mix of the two expression of the plant. With the plant matter, it's very different than just the resin. As much as I am totally dedicated to the resin because everything is made there, when the plant matter come into the equation, it's bigger.
Awesome.
Otherwise, I use a 3-hole bowl made by Andy Roth. It's like, instead of having a flower bowl with the hole at the bottom, you have a bottom that is
like a glass screen, sort of.
Rondish receptacle, and the all are at the top of the bowl. And I use a wand, a ceramic wand, to eat the ash, and I smoke it like that on a rig. That's my second favorite. Otherwise, I smoke the chillum. And that's an old habit from India.
So we had another question from chat. It says, I'm not sure where I heard this, but recently I heard there are 3 different types of trichomes: CBD, tall, medium, and short. And basically the shorter ones are harder to get off. Is that remotely
It's
true?
not this type of trichome. That's true. There is a bulbous. They are literally on the leaf of the plant. There is no stalk to it. Then there is a sessile trichome. They have like maybe 2 or 3 cellules of stalk. So they're really short stalk. And then you have the stalk trichome, the one we want. The one the plant produces to protect herself. The one with a long leg. And for the plant to produce...
Somebody's getting somebody's ass over there.
The cat and the dog are getting to know each other still, I guess.
I think that's how the dog asked for another nibble of hash.
Yeah.
The sessile, the stalk resin head, they are made when the condition of the habitat are harsh. When it's very hot, they're going to produce a lot of them, because when there is a huge density, the heads are almost touching each other. And the length of the stalk is a protection. There is an airflow there it's like air conditioned for the leaf. There is no dirt and dust that can block the stomata. There is no dehydration of the plant during the day. And at night, it's the opposite. When it's very cold, the plant does the same to protect the leaf from the frost, from drying up. So you cannot grow the trichome. You can grow the terpene that would create the cannabinoid inside the trichome, but to create the trichome, you need conditions that are promoting the growth of those. That means you don't want to stress the plant, but you want to create conditions that push the plant to create them. When it's outdoors, the natural condition does that, like the insect life and the wind and all that, make it happen. Indoor, it's a little bit more difficult because people are afraid to keep it like they really like stable, and it's not getting the best expression of the plant. What you get, it's what you feed. It's not the plant giving it to you. It's not defined by the condition of the growth. It's defined by the grower and the nutrients. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess a good allegory would be, so for brackish water fish that don't live in freshwater or saltwater, they live in tidal areas, and they'll actually live a lot longer if you change their salinity from saltier water to fresh water when you do your water changes, and you don't keep it the same, because it gives their kidneys a chance to regulate the salt, and actually it produces more enzymes and actually makes for a stronger thing. And it's the same kind of analogy like you're talking about with the cannabis. If you give it a little bit of a fluctuation, I noticed, especially when I was doing greenhouse work, especially in Colorado, where we go from those really hot 95 100 degree days a couple of days in the summer down immediately into September, where we're starting to get real cold nights in the 40s sometimes. All of a sudden those plants res up real quick because they had that heat exposure that they made that the resin to hold the water in, and then they had that cold exposure trying to do the antifreeze, and they purple up with the anthocyanins and the rest of the other other phytocannabinoids.
I don't know if I when I was growing indoor, I was trying to mimic outdoor. So nighttime was cold. If I had to spray, it would be in the morning, because it's like mimicking the dew. And trying to while you're controlling, you need to give exercise to that plant. Basically, you need to build up the muscle. You need the plant to be strong. For that, you need something a bit more stimulating than 75 during the day and 77 at night and so much humidity always. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I still think I'm totally with you. The best plants I ever grew were at 9,400 feet up in Colorado, up near Blackhawk. Although I will say the indicas tended to do much better at the high altitude than the sativas. The sativas tended to not produce about 15% less at the higher altitude than down in say Denver, for example. So,
Well, that's because tropical areas tend to be lower to sea level. Isn't that true?
well, and not only that, you'll notice a difference in altitude from the extra UV. That definitely makes your plants much more purple. I know my Warlock turns jet black. So
wow.
And less air to
try.
So like us, a plant like we have a harder time breathing higher up because there is less oxygen. So we need to adapt to it, and literally our lung function are going to get stronger because of the necessity. A plant is the same. When there is generation of them, they are not quite the same as the one that grown at ocean level.
In the jungle.
That's why maybe you had problem with sativa in a mountain, because if it's sativa coming, let's say, from Africa, that wouldn't do it. If they came from Nepal or India, you would have had a better chance.
Well, one of the big differences between the two is the thickness of the leaves. The indica trait is a very thick, kind of a leathery leaf. And that obviously can, survive a lot more colder temperatures and hotter, is better for resisting transpiration from wind, the high winds. And also less leaves. Basically, an indica plant has not nearly the canopy that a sativa plant has. With that many, a sativa plant with a whole ton of leaves, very thin, leaves, you blow some air through that and the thing is transpiring like crazy. You blow too much air through it and you're making her do push-ups, I don't know if it's such a great idea. It's fine for the indica plant. It's great for the indica plant. It depends on the character. What I'm saying is you were talking earlier about the terroir. Well, obviously the genetics can be matched.
I mean, it's like we thought it was different species. Hello, it's the same. It's like there is only one cannabis. Oh. It's so adaptive that it can.
I know. Indica sativa is not really a proper term. There's so many kinds of sativa when you really get down to it.
It was the Phylos project. I'm correct, right? The Phylos project, I think, is the name of it, where they mapped all the genetics.
It is a Phylo project, yeah. It's
Phylo project, that's it.
It's something very important that is done there, and it's something that we should help to grow as much as possible, because it's a way for us to protect the plant, to protect the genetic, to protect diversity, and not have somebody corner it like Monsanto did with the corn. So it's like, it's true that if you bring your own genetic to the guy and you're going to pay $500 for the guy to tell you that it's actually the real genetic, you knew it, it's yours. But for them to have the real stuff in their data, it's the foundation of the whole edifice. So in a certain way, because they tell everybody who gave the sample, so you have ownership of it. Yeah, it's true that when you give that away, they could steal it from you and patent it from you and do something, but their goal is way bigger than that. Because if they had that plan, they would have done it a while back.
I think a lot of us
it's a way for you to know your genetic to a level that is amazing. It cut down a lot of bullshit, because if you look at the phylum map, well, Tangy has nothing to do with the DNA family and everything to do with TGA. Skittles, actually, it's not something that has been breeded. It's just a phenotype of sherbet. There is a lot of bullshit that came into play that's going to be eliminated. And knowing your genetic as a breeder, when you're going to take that genetic and you know everything from it, you can go and look for something because you have the whole data to work with, not part of it or a lie, and then you're going to go in direction that you're going to get lost.
Exactly.
That's
And for those who don't, for those who don't know, the Phylos project is documenting all this cannabis genetics and then putting it into the public domain so that a company like Monsanto or Philip Morris or CW Pharma, those bastards,
Started by DJ Short.
Yeah.
don't come in, or let's call that guy out. What's the guy from Big Buddha Seeds that tried to patent cheese? That guy's an asshole. Fuck him. Anyway. Well, no, just if you're gonna try and screw over the whole market, I will call you out. I don't have a problem.
I got some cheese in the refrigerator.
It basically protects the whole market from people doing that and trying to corner or destroy this market. This plant is designed to heal. I mean, if you really want to get into it, I'm not religious, but the word for Jesus means the anointed one, and they've actually done some research. Jewish anointing oil had cannabis oil in it, so he was the guy anointed in cannabis oil. So I mean, you know, the three. So if you really want to draw straws on that, and you're a religious person, that's another example. You know, so this plant was put on Earth to heal people, and it shouldn't be patented in that kind of regard. It shouldn't be taken over by Monsanto or some of these other things. Look at how few choices you have for vegetables anymore, or as producers. It's all 2 or 3 seed companies are providing everything now. So.
It's also practical for the people who are actually breeding. And when you've been doing it for a while, when you've been doing it for a long time, you realize that the genetic diversity of cannabis is staggering. You get a hold of a bunch of different genetics, and so immediately you're gonna run out. You need help. I mean, I basically right now I'm looking for as many. You need help. You need to branch out into different gardens. And once you start seeing a lot of traits on plants, you start observing a lot of traits, you can also start making some fast changes. So again, you need help. And
you need to know what you're working with in the first place.
The plant itself is actually kicking us out into the. I'm a very I have a ASD, and that's one of the reasons why I was lucky to get to cannabis when I was younger, and I have a lot of problems socializing and everything, but Mary Jane, pushes me forward, pushes me into meeting someone like you and you guys, and it's a fantastic.
At the same time, patenting is also the credit given to the breeder. So it all depends how you look at it, because personally, I think that the breeder should get recognition because they don't.
Well, it's a trickle up thing. I think that every
thing for years, and it's your baby, and you doesn't matter if you put it on the market. That's your baby. You know what I mean? Everybody should know that you don't receive money or not for it. That's another domain. Finance. It's like I don't want even to go there, but crediting.
I know.
That has breeded, I think it's super important because there is such a disconnect already between the consumer and the grower. Breeding, it doesn't even exist in that plane of existence. You know what I mean? That's wrong.
It's important because it establishes truth, because the breeder has to deal with truth with himself first and then with everybody else. I could be bullshitting about Cherry Bomb. You're buying my story, right? So you're paying for the genetics. When you pay, you don't pay for the genetics, you pay for the lore. So that also goes down to the grower and as well to the patients, it's very important to people who are medical users, for example, to get information, because the science you were saying before with your thing is lagging behind. You make many speculations because you're necessarily ahead of the science. The science, of course, is lagging because it's been illegal to study the plant for all this time. And so what can we do?
And
But
there's a lot of medical patients that rely on specific strains. I know there's someone
exactly.
very close to my life that absolutely needs basically tangerine haze all the time, or they just
that
cease to
information, that lore needs to stay connected, which is the reason why it's great that us breeders, I personally didn't really want to come out of the closet because I'm, a weird dude and all that. But some other guys, are fine with being upfront and everything. But that it has to, the truth of that has to be all the way down to the consumer, to literally the medical people are the ones who need it the most, because the lore needs to be collected about how this plant affects, because each plant and all these different genetics are so amazingly different. They affect us so many different ways. They have such radically different, medical profiles that all we can rely on right now is our collected information. What we tell each other, what the lore. So I'm just saying that it's all, and it would be nice to get some recognition. I certainly wouldn't mind it, I suppose, at this point, because it has been a long haul.
No, but it's like now it gets bigger than that. It's like now it's legal and it's a different world altogether.
Yes.
And there is a lot of people playing the game who do not know the plant, who don't really care about it, and they don't really have a very good understanding of the market, local, US and worldwide, and the decision made are really bad. So now it's like the question for America and the US industry, the US cannabis industry, say, so what are you going to do? Because there is already a world market. Okay?
Totally.
So
I don't know if they think all this money is coming from. Where's this new market?
To be relevant in the future, what are you going to do in this industry? It's not by making vast quantity of cannabis using pesticide and chemical nutrient that you're going to be able to compete in a world market where producing country have been producing quantity for thousands of generations. Lebanon, 10,000 years minimum. Okay, they're the third of the countries that produce cannabis in Lebanon. You go to farm in Morocco, they have like 800,000 plants per farm. The guy has 3 farms. The guy deals with 2.5 million plants plus every year. Yeah. You really want to compete with those people? Because those people in producing country who run the world, they know for the moment that they can sell any shit on the market. It's illegal. It's all good. But they understand that there is a world market coming, and they're thinking about competing at the quality level. That means that you go to Morocco in the middle of the Rif Mountain, they have Sasquatch, they have freeze dryer, they have the whole 9 yards. They are on internet, they watch IG, they know where their competition are. And like the guy is a farmer in a reef in the middle of nowhere in a third world country, and you in America, you don't have a clue.
Yeah. Incredible.
It's going to be interesting to see the big boys. They don't have they're like the small farmers. They don't have the choice. You want to be relevant in a few years, you better choose the right game, because if you protect your small farmer and you create a legacy like the French did in Bordeaux in 1860, you can be relevant 200 years later.
Yeah.
And you have the world copying your standard of quality, and everything that you put, you can create an industry and every standard and everything in it. It's like the US right now can do that. And California has much more power than any other state to do it, because there is a legacy. You have the terroir. It's very simple. You have everything that the French used to put behind themselves 13,000 years of mass production, of the wine being so bad that you have to cut it with anything to make it palatable. But because you needed wine to sanitize water, everybody in the Western world was drinking wine. The day they had competition, they stopped quantity production and they created quality production. 200 years later, they rule the world. Do you want the same? Because your farmers, the guys that you want to kill right now, they're the one who hold that legacy in your hand. And if you just look at the history book, it's written down. There is a blueprint how to create a multi-billion-dollar industry and be relevant 100 years later.
Preach, brother, preach.
That was amazing.
I'm writing a lot of articles and I'm trying to talk a lot about it, but I don't know, it doesn't click like it click with European people where terroir and all that stuff is in. And on top of it, it's like it goes beyond that. It's like it's here in America, it's literally small farmer against monoculture. And cannabis is right in the middle, and the cannabis people are going for monoculture. This kill me because it's like you use pesticide on a plant that can absorb poison. There is half a dozen plants on the planet that can clean the planet and absorb all the poison we put in. Cannabis is the best. And so you're putting shit in the soil that grows that plant and you sell it as medicine. Good move. Good move. You're lucky that they don't test you. You know what I mean? It doesn't even make sense. Because that plant is to be able to clean the planet, not to pollute it more. It's like, guys.
Preach.
Yeah, I think preach to Frenchy.
Hey, you want to make America great?
You are fantastic.
Frenchy's gonna open. Frenchy's gonna
Allow
open
cannabis and hemp growth, hemp production across the old days with a fair market, and America would be great again.
Frenchy's gonna open his own congregation of another branch of Hash Church. It'd be the San Francisco Reverend.
Definitely.
I go to that.
I'd go to that. We are at that right now. We just heard an amazing sermon, folks.
Right. Well, thank you so much. I will let you go if you need to go, Frenchy. I wanted to if you want to tell everybody how to find you and
I gotta say something before he goes though.
Okay.
Yeah, I just have to say, I've met you a few times. I see how you're interacting with us here. I've watched how you interact, with the general community, and I really respect your generosity of knowledge, and even more so your generosity of spirit. You don't just bring some of the sciencey and my gosh all the experience, but it's obvious. Like just some of the things you're just saying here, the place that's led you and the passion that you're driven with, dude. Thank you so much for being here and being who you are with us. Appreciate it.
Well, you're sharing that love and dedication, guys. It's like it's just because I'm French and I have a French accent and I'm noisy that I make much more of an impact. But it's like we all the same. Like there is the core of people that have been dedicated to the plant. Me, I'm a latecomer. You fight for it. I did not. I lived in producing country where the culture helped me not feel like the scum of the world. You fight instead. It's like I have a lot of respect because who I became today and what I can do, it's because of people like Erreur and Denis Perron and Eddie Lepp and all the people who fight to make it happen. Huh? So it's like I'm great because I have the means to be able to express myself that was given to me by the people who fight while I was on vacation in producing country. You know what I mean? I have a lot to give to compensate.
Right on. Thank you.
Awesome. You want to tell people thank you again for how again you're one of the most unselfish people when it comes to knowledge that I've ever met, and I can't be more thankful for that. Why don't you tell people how to find you and how to take your class in person and how to find your product?
Well, if you want to know a lot about me, the best would be to go on my website, FrenchyCannoli.com. and to go to my article page where I have most of my most articles except the most recent one are not yet there, and you can access them on a PDF file. Otherwise, my playground is Instagram. Everything I do, I tell on Instagram.
Awesome. And then what about your classes?
But the classes, the next one is in Barcelona, the 8th of March, just before the Cannabis, and it's basically sold out. And the one after will be San Francisco, the 24th. And most of the workshops this year would be in San Francisco. I don't do SoCal anymore. And it's a little bit hard for me to travel when I have so much to carry with me. Especially with other states, I like to have my car. I like to be able to smoke the people during the workshop so that they can feel what I'm talking about. It's like it's part of the learning progress. I need the people to smoke what I do to be able for them to understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Nice.
I'm there. So I'm there.
Can't wait to meet you, Frenchy.
But guys, even if you don't come to and attend the workshop on the 21st, because there is a hookah at the end of the workshop, we always need some help. You are very welcome.
That's a good one.
Roger the cleanup crew.
Thanks again, and you're welcome anytime, Frenchy. I really enjoy having you on. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All
It's been
the
a pleasure.
best.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you.
Take care of them
guys.
dogs, man.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
How awesome.
Man, how awesome was that?
That was cool. That was really cool. Yeah.
Real knowledge on the fruit of the cannabis plant right there, my friends. The real fruit.
That's what was. I found it the fact that it was all about. It wasn't just about making hash. It was about where the origin of the plant was, that he got to make the hash. That was really interesting to me. Like,
The word
I
of the
went
day
down
is
in the
terroir.
jungle and I walked for a day, half a day, and then I took a boat ride down a river for two days, and and hiked a half a mile up. That was pretty cool. Yeah, that was.
Fantastic. He was the best.
I meant it when you see a guy like that who's been going at this for so long. I'm so new at this. Like, you look at my YouTube channel, you can see I started a few years ago. I didn't know shit. I knew shit. And I see, you guys that have had so much time in here. Like, we got Mr. Green Jeans here, who's been, not mouthy, just getting done.
One thing, one trick.
You just right. And it's like Frenchy's got that space owned. Mr. Green Jeans, he's going to bring the game on the breeding. You look at Steve with the fish, with Marty, and then the other hydroponics up the garage here. It's incredible to learn all these things for somebody like me, who I'm new at this. This was never my plan, and I started at like 55 or something like that, somewhere in there, and it's just like, this is awesome. I feel like sometimes like a schoolgirl at a Beatles concert or something.
I started like 48. I started really. I dabbled in stuff, but I didn't get involved in the community till I was about 48. I turned 61 last week,
So who do we have watching live tonight?
We actually have we had a really good question from chat, or we had a guy having a problem with smaller trike heads in chat, and he was asking, we were trying to figure it out, and it looks like his chloride level is too low, and a lot of people don't know. So you can have your chloride level too low. You can actually use too much dechlorinator and actually affect your plants. Your plants actually need a minimum amount of chloride
It's a
along
nutrient.
with CO2 in order to do osmosis, or not osmosis, I'm sorry, photosynthesis. So you actually can run your chloride too low, and he was running 0 to 20 parts per million. Now, I mean, that's really normal for aquaponics, but let me explain why that's a problem. We initially discovered this back when I was working at the aquaponics source before we even started playing with cannabis. Well, we were playing with cannabis, but we didn't have someone that would do tissue samples yet. We'll leave it at that for nutrient analysis. We got that later. But what we were able to do is send off. We couldn't figure out why tomatoes from soil tasted differently from the same strain in aquaponics. So we did mineral tests on them, and what ended up being was the chloride level and the silica level were the two things that were missing, and in the ones that didn't taste quite as good. And as soon as we supplemented those back up to where they should be, it worked out great. Now you're looking for chloride. You want around 110 plus minus, anywhere in there is okay. You're not harm. There's no harm to the fish until the EPA puts it at 200 parts per million. I think 180 is a little bit better of a number, especially if you're doing smaller fish. But that's really easy enough. Calcium chloride, potassium chloride. You can easily add it when you're dosing other nutrients. There's plenty of different chlorides. You can add ammonium chloride if you're low on fish, even. Or if you're going to cycle the system without any fish in it, as long as you don't overshoot your chloride. But you do need a minimum amount of chloride in order to facilitate proper photosynthesis. And it will actually change your trichome production, and it'll change your terpene production, and it will change the flavonoid production, and everything from cannabis to tomatoes to peppers to anything you're going after, really.
And for all you newbies out there like me and everybody that does, that maybe the shifting from hydroponics to aquaponics, the ammonia and all that is the where your nitrogen comes from eventually, as it.
Yep.
So that's why you could cycle without the fish and have that. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I caught that. I said, "Oh yeah, I can say so."
And that's a great. I'm glad you bring this up. So if you are doing a fishless cycling, you do want to do four parts per million ammonia. If you go above 4 parts per million, as soon as you hit 6, you actually start to have a high enough ammonia level to where you're actually making it harder for those microbes to go. So if you slam your ammonia to say 8 or 12 or 14, those microbes are now going to have a brutally hard time trying to colonize, and you might actually totally prevent cycling. I've seen people do this multiple times where they ludicrously overdose their fish the cycling. That's why I'll be honest with you, I prefer to cycle with just some sterilized gold, quarantine goldfish or salt dipped goldfish or something like that. And having some kind of a minimal biological thing, if for nothing else, that the microbes, the gut microbes from the fish that come out of the thing actually help with the nitrification process to begin with. If you're doing a small home grow and you have an aquarium, you have a buddy that has an aquarium, you can actually take a dirty filter, especially if they have a hang on the back filter, and put it in your media bed or put it in your filter, and the microbes on that are the same nitrifying bacteria that you're trying to get to cycle your system. So you can directly spawn, as long as you know the tank is clean, you can directly spawn them off of that and actually speed up the cycling process of your tank. We call it, we used to do aquarium maintenance, and we call it cheating, where we take water from a cycled tank along with a cycled filter that we cycled off of one of the in-house systems and plop it on there, and with cycled gravel, that I don't have to cycle that system. I can drop a system right into a restaurant and it's ready to go day one. Basically, because everything's cycled already, even though it's a brand new tank.
Yeah, but working biofilter already.
You're providing an aquaculture, right? You're
providing everything colonized already. Yeah.
You're kind of adding a already proven aquaculture that's healthy, and kind of inoculating another.
You got biological.
Cool. That's cool. That's great information. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, my friend.
Go, Mr. Ganges. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say you got mechanical filtration and biological filtration, basically, right? I mean, that's what you're doing is making an instantaneous biofilter situation, right?
Yep, but the
You're
biological
not.
filter is the one generating the bulk of your nutrients, which is why you're trying to maintain that. Now, one other thing is that your nitrifying bacteria, for example. Sorry, I'm looking off to the corner. It's just the layout and where the camera is and everything here. Um, so
Hollywood.
so the other thing is that your nitrifying bacteria take a month or two usually to cycle. Your phosphorus bacteria don't colonize quite as quickly and actually take a little longer, which is why we often recommend using Mammoth P right in the beginning of cycling to get those guys a head start because they take longer to colonize in the system. But the older a system is, an 8-month or 8 to 12-month-old aquaponic system will to produce much better. Even if you're doing remineralization, even if you're doing all the other stuff that everyone likes to do, even if you're doing decoupled, will still do better after about a year than it will that first 3 months or first 6 months even. It still won't, especially for flowering crops. There's just a certain level of microbial maturity and colonization that simply takes a little longer because no one's isolated all those yet and put them into a formula that you could use as a seed colony the same way that they have with nitrogen because no one's been focused on it because we've only been allowed to really focus on that as far as nitrifying material and not so much for aquaponic cannabis or organic hydro or a lot of this other stuff that would have that similar application.
The key is that the aquaculture is the key of it. And with Mr. Green Jeans, which is interesting, I find so interesting is that he's not really got an aquaponic system, but he's got an aquaculture built over years in a pond, and that's how he waters his plants. And I think that's really cool, because it goes back to for all you newer folks, that's what Steve's talking about. It's all about the culture and the microbiology that's going on, the microbes and everything, and the aquaculture that creates with the water. It's way more than what the fish provide. And then you can take that and create another pond or something from that. That's
go ahead.
Yeah,
The way I hear it is like you got your nutrients and you have your bio life aspect of the system. One of the things I find so fascinating about the aquaponics approach is real, or like the living soil approach, is the whole mindset is I'm creating this environment, and if that environment is alive and has the nutrients, that's basically going to force really awesome plants out of it. Nothing else.
That's the culture. Yes, the culture.
It's like bringing the outside in instead of blocking the out. That's why like the idea of sealed grow rooms, and grow tents. I'm not so sure about that. I've had a lot.
I didn't like it. It just the plants didn't like it. The plants didn't like it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people grow tents. I'm sorry, but
I do like to boost. I'll seal it up briefly for give them 45 minutes or an hour to drink the CO2 and then vent it back. Open it back
right.
up.
If you're using supplemental CO2, it's a good idea to have a tent, of course.
And it's great for propagation or something, or maybe even the veg area, but as far as flowering, I don't like it. I like to have an airy, nice, comfortable environment where my plants feel happy, because I wouldn't want to be stuck in that thing,
I believe in inviting
I tried growing in those sealed environments, and what happened was I apparently kept everything out like life, and the only thing that ever made it into my sealed tent seemed to be pathogens.
Well, maybe it's because you had cooties. I don't know.
Yeah, it did.
But the whole sterile environment thing is a fallacy. I mean, it's a pipe dream. You know what I mean? It's like think that, and that's one of the problems with hydroponics is the idea of controlling the environment, and this is why aquaponics is superior easily to regular hydroponic systems, is because you're admitting the outside in. You're allowing for a greater degree of complexity than you can fully understand or calculate for.
Yeah, so I'll give you a great example of hydro versus AP. In hydroponics, you could have something like Pythium or root rot that tears through a system in a matter of hours.
Yeah,
12 to
I've seen
36
it.
hours can rip through a system and start to screw everything up if you don't catch it early. And in aquaponics, we have so much microbial diversity that there's other stuff hunting it down and trying to
Yeah,
eat it and
yeah,
trying
like
to
the
eat the
soil.
food and trying to eat the food or metabolites that it would colonize on or feed off of to colonize and replicate enough to establish itself enough to attack the plant. Because Pythium is very often found in a lot of soils. It's just
hmm
it's kept in check.
Well,
And go ahead.
That's
in
the
my
story of soil,
years
isn't
of
it?
running my greenhouse, I never lost my greenhouse, my hydroponic greenhouse Pythium rot or anything like that. So, I mean, I'm sure there's place, and I'm in a humid area too, but I'm in a long seasonal area, and I always adapted my greenhouse to try to balance out whatever nature was throwing at me.
Well, it also depends on the oxygen level of the solution too. If it's really oxygenated, they don't like that at all. So, but if you have low airflow and you're doing NFTs or something, yeah, it'll rip through your shit real quick.
Oh yeah, now
Yeah.
see, now I agree with you there. If you're doing NFT, that's a whole different ball game, because what happens is in an NFT system, you've basically got a sealed tray that is fluids running down, and it gets hot. In the summer, I mean, it's only like this big, and they put all these lettuce or whatever, if you're talking about that, and you're running the NFT, by the way, is nutrient film technique, which is about 1/8 of an inch of water running at 1 inch and 8 feet drop level, which is a typical drain. You go 1 inch every 8 feet is what you drop for a drain system, and that's how you build hydroponic. Anyway, so it runs down a film, and you put net pots or whatever. You put the plants in there or whatever, and then the roots grow in this channel. So that's why you would have that root rot in that kind of system, because that channel gets really hot. I mean, you've only got a little bit of water. It's not like deep water culture, where I've actually seen where somebody had a 2 foot deep, 2 to 3 foot deep concrete pond that they floated rafts for lettuce and all, and it was incredible. Even had they had allowed algae. They had algae and all, and they actually, and we're getting it's kind of interesting because it was hydroponics, but they also created, and this is why I jumped in, created an aquaculture there. See, it wasn't sterile. So that's the myth, like you said, that thing about hydroponics and being sterile. I tell you what, you got to really be stringent and on the ball. I mean, you almost anal in to keep your hydroponic systems.
It's a losing battle. The longer you get, hydroponics is only for something like lettuce. The longer you got to grow anything, the harder it is. And that's the problem with cannabis, is because it's almost a fruiting plant. Can be a long flowering plant, and that just gives you more time.
I could grow tomatoes and peppers. I can grow tomatoes for for a year or two, with a lean and layering method, because I grow vertically. I hang everything and so everything grows up vertically for 8 feet, and if I'm growing tomatoes, then I lay them down. Now, I know we are talking about cannabis too, but we're talking about the whole philosophy. So, as far as that goes, I don't agree necessarily that hydroponics is only for short-term vegetables, but it's really easy for lettuce. It is really easy for lettuce, because you basically don't have to do well. See, now we know that really to grow lettuce, all you need is to get a little aquarium and put some fish in it, and you can grow lettuce. So I yield on that. I'm just saying, being somewhat knowledgeable about hydroponics, I have to throw in some.
I grew a cannabis plant all the way to term, all the way to flowering with fish water, with water from my fish tank. So I think that qualifies as aquaponics. I did a
Yeah, that's
DW
that's why I brought it up.
17 years
Yeah,
ago.
that's why I brought it up about you.
17 years ago. It worked great. It was fantastic. The quality was great. The only problem was it was bigger. It took up a little bit more room in my closet, and I'm generally flowering, much smaller plants, smaller containers.
Now, was that in organic soil though? Because you never,
No,
you
it's
say
water.
I watered it with
DWC, it's straight fish water, no
yeah,
soil at
but
all.
what was your medium?
Water, DWC.
Oh, in
Five.
water culture, you just gave them. Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, DWC.
So when we did, I'd grown cannabis, DWC, NFT, dual root zone, straight in a media bed, and a wicking bed. I know friends that do wicking beds. They call it SIPs or sub-irrigated farming or whatever the fuck.
Well, if you
and
use
that works, and that worked for them. Now, when I did it, I used cloth pots. And I think that might have been one of the things that was the problem, was that the cloth pot itself was staying too wet,
right,
and that
yes.
there was actually the issues going on with that, and because every single time it'd be like 2 weeks out when we did it in the wicking beds with the aquaponics, like 2 weeks out we'd have root issues and I have to harvest early, and we tried probably 3 or 4 runs with different soil mixes, and I'm sure you could dial it in, but we got frustrated and we were having such good luck with the dual root zone. It was like, why should I fix if this is working so much better? Why should we screw with it? So that's what we ended up doing. Now in the straight DWC, and there's actually some decent documentation for it on Friendly Aquaponics before they got arrested. Well, they're a bunch of clowns. We've talked about them a bunch. Anyways, they actually, well, and we ran the same test, but what happens with DWC and aquaponics when you don't have that soil layer or some other way to supplement without killing your fish, the buds don't develop, and you end up with these larvier, stretched out plants that they look like a nitrogen toxic plant, like a plant that just had too much nitrogen. Even though you kept the nitrogen levels in the right range, they just don't finish filling out right. That's the problem that we've had. Now, the one exception to that, I would say, would be Aquaponic Dummy, who did the aeroponics with the aquaponic water, and he actually had some really good results. But that was a little bit different. He was super specialized in that his setup would in no way work for commercial at all. I mean, his room, and you can go onto his channel. It's a pretty tricked out room, but he had sprayers. I haven't heard from him. I've tried reaching out to him for a little while now, and
he contacted me. Well, it was my birthday last week, and he wished me happy birthday. Birthday. He's got 2 foot culverts where he drilled holes and put in like those 6-inch net pots you would put on the top of a bucket or whatever, is what Steve's talking about. You're right though. Aquaponic Dummy on Facebook, and he's also got, he's at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com. If you want to, you can go and look up his post there too. But he's all over the place. I mean, he's just got through doing his exams for that botany, college course he's been taking.
I've tried to get a hold of him for a little while, and I haven't been able to hear from him.
But you're right. He's changed several. He even changed like his filters. And in fact, he went from the spinning for his aeroponics. He went from the spinning 360 spinners to this little circular, and it didn't work, by the way. If you remember, he told the little spiral.
The bacterial colonies end up building up. It's the same thing with if anyone's tried to do the zip grow towers with aquaponics, they have the stupid little sprayers that do not work. I mean, that design just simply does not work at all. You'll spend more labor just unjamming the heads and trying to keep your plants from dying at the root zone. That's why it's insane to me that they have companies like what's it called? There's a big one here in the Bay Area. It's based around that same design, and it's like, guys, we've seen that not work in a whole bunch of other farms. Why would you go and take that same design that didn't work in all these other places and try to use it again with those same sprayers? And the whole thing is just not designed right. And that's why
And
you
part of
don't
his
see those
problem
really for
was the
sale
snail.
anymore.
It was about the snails too. A lot of his what he
Yes.
was trying to do with
Yep.
sprayers had to do with the fact that snails were clogging everything up. You know,
Well, snails, and then you
it
get the
wasn't
bacteria
snail, you know,
colonies.
breaking
The
up. Oh, go ahead.
You get just beneficial bacteria colonies. Like we talked about the colonies that break down your nutrients. Those just eventually build up into strings, or you get algae strings that get through, or, you know, fish mucus, or there's all kinds of biological activity that can get through seed shrimp corpses and all kinds of other things.
Well,
you
I'm
know,
really surprised you guys haven't come up with a better filter yet. Well, I mean, what's
What do you
keeping
mean?
you?
Why would I want to filter that? The plant roots like it just the same.
No, I
There's
mean,
no
talk
reason
about
to
clogging
filter.
up the sprayers and stuff with everything.
Oh,
You
you
know,
can, but you have to go to high pressure, and those filters will clog. I have to change that filter 4 times a day. Like, forget that. You know what we did? So the tower that I designed, and it's still out there, it's Aquavertica. You can look it up. I don't have anything to do with that company anymore, but we use 1/2-inch open head pipe. Why? Because it doesn't clog. I can, I
yeah.
can run it at a wide range of flow rates, and it doesn't clog. You know?
Oh, you
So
just gave me an idea that would solve the problem for everybody. You just have to do an open pipe and then have a device at the
actually, okay.
bottom of it that
Actually, it's wrong. No. And actually, I'll show you. I could show you a diagram with like this soda can and this chillum. So what you want to do is you want to do like 1.5 inch or a 2-inch base pipe. So you have your water comes in from the bottom from your pump, and it goes straight up, and it goes over to a reservoir pipe that's 1.5 inch or 2-inch. Then you get a reducer that go a T that goes a T to a smaller output, say a 1/2 inch. No, my favorite is to go 1.5 inch to 1/2 inch, just because you can get those at Home Depot, and you want to do a T off of that, because that's going to be a reservoir. And there's a reason for this, because if I do a straight pipe and I do nipples at the bottom, what's going to happen? The first ones are going to turn into a venturi. So if I have a string of these, and I have, say, and I've done this, I say, well, we didn't do it this many, but we did a couple of different test sizes. And if I have a string of piping that goes straight down, okay, and I have, you know, nipple here, nipple here, nipple here, and nipple here, you know, each way, what happens is the far end ones will get a higher flow rate, and the first ones will start sucking in air, and it'll work like a venturi does on a pump or something like that. In order to get rid of that and to make an auto purging method, you have to have the water come up from the bottom into a larger diameter pipe, 1.5 inch or 2-inch, then go up to a 1/2 inch on the top of the pipe, up, and then so we'll do this from the side, up and over at a 90 degree with another 90 degree, and then have your output from this go down into your tower or whatever your output is. This way, when the air, if any air gets in here, automatically purges out at any point in the whole line automatically, because of the way the air wants to flow. So by doing that, you can completely prevent the venturi while still getting full efficiency and being able to run whatever. The nice thing about that is too, is because that reservoir is being filled up at the same rate, that my flow rate across that entire a row of towers, you know, be it 100 yards or 500 yards or 5 towers, it doesn't matter, will be the same from end to end, because it's just filling a reservoir that's then overflowing at the lip. And as long as that level is even, you know, where it goes over at that 90 up and over, as long as that's level, you will have the exact same flow rate on 1,000 towers or 5 towers. And that was one of the ones that was one of the biggest engineering things. We probably built 18 or 20 different designs before we nailed that. And that was one of the bigger ones that I haven't seen people reproduce, but it's one I'll throw out there just in case somebody's trying to do a bunch of towers or having fun with that, and they aren't, you know, wasting time with the zip grows.
Now, and there's another thing too. If you're providing a line, now that was interesting, but I thought of this. If you're providing a long line that you're going to provide nutrients down several rows or something, you have to make sure that you start from your pump and reservoir where your water supply, and your line has to run slightly uphill, just like your drain has to run slightly downhill. You have to, that keeps air out of the line also. And helps from creating
the nice thing about it is it lets you it just gives you even flow rate, which is nice.
Right.
One of the other things, because if
Just
I try to do
pressure.
the same way I described with just a straight pipe with down nipples, I'm going to have to adjust those valves on the close end from the far end again to prevent that venturing, and trying to adjust them when there's 500 of them, or say an entire farm's worth, is a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. So
That's what they make valves for.
well, with this method, you don't even have to. Yes, you have a valve at the top to shut the water off if I need to harvest that tower. Maybe that harvest got damaged, or I need to repair it. I need to replant it, whatever. It's a far easier way.
Until it clogs up or it doesn't work. Thing.
Yeah.
It's always good to have the valves anyway, because it just allows you to generate pressure here and there. Like, so even if you try to build the perfect system, you might have an area where you don't get the pressure. Like you've got this idea, and it's designed to, the idea is that it's going to be perfect and they're going to have even pressure across the whole system, but perhaps you don't. And how you remedy that is by adding, where you have. That's why I always add control valves right off the bat. At different increments, or sections, and whatever you want to call it.
Yes, I'm a big believer in that you cannot put too many valves or too many union joints. You cannot put too many of those in, but just remember those go together, because you need to shut off the water before you disconnect the pipe.
That's good, yeah. But that's the best way to be able to, you can, if you don't have the perfect situation and you put a system together and you're having problems, say you already have a system and you're having low pressure in one area, by adding valves in the right areas, and it's hard to, to really tell you how to do that right here, but by adding valves before and after in different spots, you can create the pressure to make the water pressure in that area even with the other area, and then you have to turn your pump up.
Or shut off a leak. Maybe somebody tripped and fell and slammed into the side of the grow bed that happened to weigh 300 pounds and broke the end of the grow tray off. I've seen that happen at grows. I've seen people go through fish tanks at a pet store. You got to shut off the water real quick to keep the whole system from draining. I fell into a fish tank on a ladder, and I didn't break the glass, but I got stung real bad, and I fell backwards and spilled a whole bunch of water, and they thought I broke the tank, and thankfully it was just the bucket. But you need to be able to shut stuff off, or at least manage it to mitigate how much water you're losing or how much water damage or whatever.
Well, it's a good point, because if you're in a 30 by 48 greenhouse, you got 5 40-foot lines basically, because you basically keep 4 feet at each end, and you run your main your main line down the end, and you run then you run 1/2-inch pipe down there with, at least I do, with micro sprayers and stuff, and if one of them blow out, you want to have that valve at the end of that line, so that if that line blows out, you just cut that off, and it doesn't affect any of the rest of the house. This even applies to a little system. I mean, whether it be aquaponics, hydroponics, or whatever, you could build like little intricate systems with, they make there's some great products out there. If you want to get into that kind of stuff, I recommend, I don't know. I don't know if I should do it. Maybe I'll do like Rosie, and maybe somebody will give me some money, but I like the Toro lines. The Toros you can buy at one of the big box, supply stores. They got all the connections, and there's all kinds of valves that are there, so you can build the ultimate system of whatever you want using PVC tubing. It's very inexpensive that way. More people like to, and I'm a proponent of this too. None of it's that expensive, really, unless you're building a great place, like a commercial grow. But for small grows, you can be really inventive, but don't forget to use a bunch of valves, because they can create, allow you to balance your pressure throughout your whole system and really dial it in, so that every plant is getting a good feeding when your pumps turn on. And I yield.
Well, it's funny that y'all are talking about that because I was doing the exact same thing today to my kitchen system that I actually have moringa growing in. Steve, thought you might be kind of excited to know about that.
Hell yeah.
But I got a couple moringa seeds growing, and I actually started one of my dual root zone pots. That way, as soon as I finish this other one out, I'm gonna put that one into that grow bed. But with the pump that I have, it was having too much, pushing out too much pressure for the solids filter that I have, just a little swirl filter that I built, just real basic design. And if I put that thing on full blast, it was going too strong for it would basically overflow the swirl filter. So what I had to do is throw a valve on there and open that pump up all the way and just bleed off the rest of that pressure through the valve.
And you bleed it back into your tank. See,
Exactly.
I meant to
And it
bring
also
that
helps
up.
aerate that, you know?
Yeah, it's right. It helps aerate your tank. So what he means is you come up out of your pump, like in my situation. Let's just say I got 1,000-liter reservoir, and the nutrient solution comes into a pump, right there at the bottom of the tank. My pump pumps up, and then I have a valve. Two valves, actually. It goes into a Y, and I have two valves. One goes back to the nutrient tank, and one goes back down, even though there's enough pressure. You got to have a lot of pressure to do this, but it goes back down to the house. And so when you don't have enough pressure, or to, like in this, what Brain's saying, you can take you got a valve going to the house, and you got a valve going to the back to the reservoir. You can open up the valve going back to the reservoir and release the pressure from the tank, from the pump going into the house to water all the plants, and also aerate your reservoir, because the water, once you pump it back in, or if you don't have enough pressure, you can close that back line. They call it a backflow line, into, so you can close that off, and you can create more pressure for the house, because say that, whatever, they're not water, or we might even do that. They're not getting watered enough, or say late in, when there's a lot of fruit on the plants, or a lot of buds, then you would want to increase the watering event without increasing the time of the watering event. So you could close that valve that was going back to the reservoir a little bit more and create more pressure. So by having a valve on each side, yeah, that's pretty neat. I'm glad we talked about this too. That's a lot of people don't realize this. It's a very simple science. It's just got to be creative. You got to go stand in Home Depot for like
basic
35
hydraulics,
hours, okay, and
fluid
look
dynamics,
at everything. That's how I started. I used to stand there for hours and look. I have 40 different kinds of things to put together and figure out how, because I just want to build every system that you could build and by myself. Without, I said, the systems are the cost of these hydroponic systems, when they are nice and they work, but when you look at the hydroponic systems that were for sale in 2005, when it started, they were astronomically high. I mean, it was $500 for, get this, guys, you guys that are new to this in the last few years, you're not going to understand this. 1,000-watt HID metal halide or HPS lamp was like $500 frickin' dollars. Now you can buy a digital for $120 or $180, digital lamps. Anyway, I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having too much fun all of a sudden.
So I was just going to say, another thing that you could do with that extra line you added with the valve on it, like I did, is like, say you are growing cannabis in that grow bed, you can add like a NFT little lettuce line, throw a few lettuce plants in there, soak up extra nitrogen and whatnot.
And actually added maybe even another valve there to create the pressure for that, to allow it to flow or not to flow too. So
right.
Yeah, but yeah, that's an interesting thing because we're always talking about Marty and always loving about his companion plants he's growing in his beds all the time, you know. And you too, don't you do the same thing? You grow different plants in your beds along
Well, I
with
try
your.
to, but I just don't have enough room. And that's why I was just like, I want to grow other plants, so I'll just make a whole new grow bed for it. So that's what I did.
That's cool.
And I have
That's
that
cool.
in my kitchen.
That is really cool that we were talking about that, and you just said, "Well, I just did a thing, and I added another line off there with a valve."
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was like, well, yeah, might as well chime in on that since that's what I was doing today. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was doing that right before I got on the show. And that's why, like, right before I got on, I was trying to eat something real quick because I didn't have any time. I was trying to calibrate that valve perfectly, make sure my water level is good in my grow bed.
I know a lot of people have aquaponic basement grows, and they'll run a line straight through the wall of their basement out to their garden in the summertime and run their outdoor grows or a hoop house or something and plumb it straight to the fish tanks in the basement.
You know, when y'all think about talking about that, doing your beds too, there's something else. I don't know what you guys could tell me what you think, but it just made me think about when you're talking about your level. Well, another way you can control, make sure your level in your grow bed didn't get too high, is you can run a T in your supply line where you've got like a similar like a tub or something where you've got an open line where if the water comes up to there, it drains back out. And that gives you that affords you a secondary security measure for not overflowing your table or getting it too high. Running a drain system where you've got a just an open like 3/4 inch piece of PVC that runs into a bucket or something like that, in case it overflows, or back into your system, I guess.
Yep.
You don't think?
So,
I mean, is that viable? Do you think that's viable at all? I mean, didn't get a lot of.
you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can
I mean, there's
circulate them any way you want.
yeah, there's endless possibilities you can do with that. You can even throw that on a solids filter if you wanted to.
Yeah. Like anytime you got a worry about water overflowing or solution or whatever overflowing, you can throw a T in there. Provide a drain that comes up to the level you want. Like in fact, you could buy a ebb and flow kit. There's like $7 or $8, $10 an ebb and flow kit, and then add a safety drain somewhere in your bed where you run it up and you put ebb and flow because the ebb and flow kit will screw right to any PVC fittings. You go down to the big box mart and you get into the plumbing section and you find the stuff that hooks up to that, and then you run it up there, and if the water gets to that level, it'll drain right back out. And that's a little safety drain, and it's also a good way to provide oxygenation if you're doing things of the old Soma method,
Overflow.
where you
Any kind of overflow system, because you're skimming the surface of, which is really good. I used to be into raising bettas way back in the day. Still have a couple around, and I used to build tanks for them. And I made back overflow tanks where you have a top surface area like that, and the water flows over the back and into a gravel filter on the back. And that works really nice because it's constantly skimming the surface off the water, which is really ultimate for not only protein, it skims the protein directly off, which is where everything is collecting, but it also oxygenates really well.
So you're saying it takes the protein and puts it back in the reservoir?
Yeah, well, because a lot of like protein immediately, whatever it is, waste and stuff first collects pretty much on the surface of the water. Yeah. So if you're doing kind of system where you're overflowing or skimming, like a skimming system, a filtration system where you're skimming the surface, is what you're talking about, like an overflow, like having a pipe. You can have a flotation thing on that, so it's adjustable, or you can just have it, set at a height. But that is an overflow system.
You have it to where it stays to where that's as high as you want the water to ever be, and then
right.
And if you add a device, well, you have to lower it a little, but you have to make that so that it just drains when it gets there. And so, yeah, skimmer. All right, I like it. We'll call it a skimmer.
I think they use that terminology in fish still, don't they, Steve? with aquaculture. Yeah, a skimmer filter, or
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
and
matter of fact, if you go back and look at Aquaponic Dummy's trout tank that he did, he put a skimmer on that.
Oh
yeah,
yeah, he does have an ultimate system, man. I'm telling you.
it's really
yeah,
good.
but it depends
It's not
on what you're
viable,
trying
like
to
Steve
do.
said. It's not viable for commercial use because the components of it itself are just expensive as hell.
Yeah.
We've had many long talks about what I told him he's freaking crazy, but
It's fine if you want to do 6 plants or 12 plants, but it's just the amount of labor and the little things that can go wrong are very high. But it's a cool setup.
it's a badass setup. It's got really high yield potential and it's high quality, no doubt about it. You can see it. There's no doubt. If you go watch his stuff, you'll see. I mean, you'll go, wow. I mean, in fact, looking at his videos would sell you on trying to grow aquaponics, use aquaponics. Because if you go watch his video, you go, no shit, really. And then, I, he introduced and thank you, my friend. He introduced me to Steve, too. Yeah, if y'all don't know that, that's how I got introduced to Steve. Dummy, I was, lucky to have Dummy come on and help me at ILGM back in the day. And he still helps out there, kind of in his, he still works a lot, but it's kind of, he's not he's not a presence anymore. But he does do it. I noticed that because you can see what he does. He does a lot of work, editing and just moderating under like underground kind of thing, and he's also involved. I can tell you this too, if you want to. He's at Overgrow, the new Overgrow. I'm kind of jealous about that because after they shut it down, with the Dutch Passion scandal thing and shut it all down years ago, this guy, they waited and waited and waited and waited, and this guy finally waited to where they allowed the .com to be available, and he bought it. So there is an overgrow.com again. And sorry, Robert, I don't mean, you know how I am about advertising other companies and stuff.
The question is, does it have the archives of the original Overgrow? The legend is that various people do have.
Well, I know where they're at too, and I can't tell you right now because I really don't. I'm too busy but I've got it in my shortcuts. There were a couple of sites that had the original overgrow.com. GrowFax is what you're talking about. The archives, the GrowFax. Yes, there are archives of all that have the original overgrow.com's GrowFax, and I'm not sure because although I was welcomed with open arms by the new owner, I have my own company to run, and I like him and I wish him well. But I can tell you, Dummy's there too. Because Dummy started posting, and the guy made him a moderator, immediately. So and Dummy's great, he's so knowledgeable. He really is. He's so knowledgeable. He's got one of the greatest personalities of anybody I ever met. And he's a very giving person. I miss him so much too, Steve. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hijack you, but yeah. I don't want to call him a dog, but it's almost like losing my dog. It's like when he disappeared. Well, I love my dog more than I love human beings. So
Recently lost the dog here, so calm down.
Steve, your mic's not coming through.
Oh, so what have you been up to, Brain Grow?
Well, I just finally recently had the harvest of my Ninja Fruits 1 and 2, and off of my basically what was my budget build up that I did, For less than $300, aquaponic setup, including the grow media, fans, pumps, everything you need. Um, I harvested 61 grams off of that, which more than pays for what I did the setup for. So I'm pretty proud of that. But I'm pretty sure I could do better because this is the same plant that I had the hiccup on, where the pump was slightly unplugged, and this was during, I think, the first. I'm gonna say the second or third week of flowering. So I feel like that really hindered my growth. I feel like I could have came out with about 75 or 80 grams from there. But I'm definitely happy with the material it came out with. It's very nice. Looks like just little super tight Christmas tree nugs. They're beautiful. And
How
then
long
on
was your
the
How long was your veg?
let's see. I started veg October, I'm gonna say 5th. Well, okay. The seed started to sprout in October. So it was going through, and I started flower on December 4th. So let's see, October, 2 months veg.
So that was from seed. So that, yeah, you
Yeah,
don't count like the first week or two. But yeah,
right.
no, cool.
So I'm pretty happy with the results I got from that, and I'm aiming to do better. I'm aiming to do better. But on the purple pheno, I have not been able to trim that yet because I harvested that 2 days after I harvested the Ninja Fruit #1, and we had some warm days during the drying of Ninja Fruit 1, and now it's cold and damp right now, so that's affecting the drying time a little bit. So, like the past 24 hours was basically no drying. It felt like happened. So, oh, maybe trim tomorrow or the next day, hopefully. Uh, the leaves are just finally starting to crisp up and whatnot, so I'm looking forward to that and looking at what my dry weight of that is. But other than that, I still have the Ninja Fruit #3, which is still going on, and I was doing the math. So this is the plant that I started in flowering on Christmas, and so we just cruised past week 8, and we have a solid mass of white pistils that is finally starting to die back some. And if you squeeze those nugs, they're like an inch and a half, 2 inches dense, just rock solid. It's insane. And this is the same pheno that I accidentally put into the recirculating deep water culture with my aquaponic system. So I'm thinking that's going to go about another, I don't know, 2-3 weeks before it's even looking like it's going to be ready to harvest. But I'm pretty excited about that because now from here on out is basically I'm looking forward to the calyxes swelling up now that the pistils are dying back, which is going to put on even more mass to those buds that are already completely solid, dense all the way through. And
well,
then,
since we were talking about, if I can interrupt you real quick, you were talking about you're doing, with your deep water culture, recirculating deep water culture with aquaponics, which is something that, was, we were just talking about filters and stuff like that.
right.
What is it that you do for those out there that might want to try that? What is it that you do that keeps, how do you filter it so that you can have recirculation without clogs, or how you combat or how are you proactive against clogging of your system with an
I mean, it
aquaponic?
can't. I'll have to say that it can't be difficult for people to figure that out because all I have is a 3/4 inch standpipe, and as I mentioned before, it has the holes drilled at the bottom, but they clogged up, and that's why it becomes a recirculating deep water culture system, and it's still dual root zone, mind you, as well. So it's dual root zone recirculating deep water culture system, and this is the best plant that I've got going so far. And all I have is a net cup set on top of that drain. There is the leaves that have fallen off of the plant that are down there in the water decaying and whatnot. So there's not much filtration really going on there besides a little 3-inch neck cup sitting on top of that 3/4-inch drain pipe that I have there. Other than that, I do have the solids filter on the system, which is a swirl filter. It's real basic design, holds about 20, 25 gallons, and it just skims the water off the middle with the swirling action. I'm pretty sure most of y'all already know what I'm talking about there. But yeah, I started those original skunk number ones, and I will actually have a side-by-side going now for dual root zone versus just straight media beds. And that's going to be in my main system. And I also have another clone of that same original skunk number one that will be going in my budget build-up system. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those produce. They are both, or all three, are clones that have been re-vegged. So that's pretty cool too. My first time really growing that from re-vegs all the way through flower. So that'll be fun. Other than that, my mycology projects are just doing awesome right now. My jars are probably about 80% colonized, so I'll be able to move to fruiting with that pretty soon. And then other than that, I'm experimenting a little bit with cactus as well, trying to see how those grow. And you'd be surprised at how sterility is actually the key to having success with cactus if you're trying to grow it in an actual soil medium. So that's pretty interesting.
You talking about
the
paddle cactus?
They're as
Yeah,
bad
well,
as,
I have
they're as bad as the mushrooms sometimes, depending
yeah,
on what you're doing.
yeah. And like I said, I kind of find that out the hard way. I had a cactus cutting, and I tried to stick that thing straight into soil. All right, so I'll go ahead and share my experience with y'all since we're on the subject. But I had a cactus cutting, and I tried. It had already had little roots coming out the bottom, so I tried to go ahead and put it into a medium, and watered it once. So first mistake I made was I watered it.
Right.
And right now, while it's still in the winter, basically cactus go dormant in the winter, and this is something I didn't know. So again, I'm still new to this, but so there's basically no metabolism really going on in the cactus until you see signs of it starting to shrivel up. Is what I've seen. That's consistent with what most people say. Okay, after it's dormant, wait for it to start to shrivel up, and then you can water it. But
I would think you'd want to plant. What are you planting it in? Because I would think you'd want to use clay and sand. I mean, that's
right, yeah, I did mix it
grows like a
about
sunbitch in
50%
Texas,
sand.
Huh?
Yeah, I mixed it about 50% sand, threw some vermiculite in there, and then just a little bit of my substrate that I use for my regular growing. So probably like 60, 20, 30 maybe, something like that.
I think it's not dense enough. I think that cactus would require a denser medium.
No,
because
I mean, for the most part, that's one thing that I also found consistent is that they like the sandy medium, like at least 50% sand or perlite or something like that. But basically, I went ahead and had to cut that. Well, I sterilized the blade first. I just sterilized it with alcohol and made another cut on that cactus cutting that I had. So it's about 2.5 inches tall now. It's just a little nub, but it's callousing up and it's not being infected by fungi or anything like that. So that's a good thing. That
good for
hopefully
you.
maybe I'll be able to recover that from my first mistake. So. But other than that, that's pretty much all I got going on. I'm really looking forward to fruiting out my mushrooms.
Cool.
That's interesting. And that's for those of you that didn't understand and you could or had to Google mycology. He's growing mushrooms.
Right. I guess I should mention
that. What have you been up to, Mr. Green Jeans?
Oh yeah. Let's see.
Getting stoned.
Yeah, same. Well, the thing is, I was smoking this amazing Blizz plant, which was the one I was holding last week that was cascading all those trichomes all over me. And Tommy was like, it was, it's a super smelly plant. And I was smoking some of it now, so it's just wow. It's got the shotgun effect. It seems to get you high in so many different ways, but on a kind of an even level, kind of like a frequency, like all the frequencies, the sound frequencies of an amazing noise, it's just like really, just got all the levels to it. Seems to hit all the push all the
Harmony.
buttons. Someone said the shotgun effect, which I thought was interesting because it's powerful. But then it can't, it doesn't, well, no, it looks very resiny and all that, but it's a light sativa still, and I imagine it wouldn't test that high in THC, although I could be totally wrong. Sometimes sativas that have really lightweight leaves and super thin stems, that burn really nice, like the Blue Dream. A lot of people, people like it for that. I think I was talking about that before, because the plant material of it is so light, so it's so much better for smoking than some kind of, like like Frenchy
Not
was
to
saying.
mention it smells freaking great and gets you stoned as shit.
Yeah, but I was also speculating as to whether or not that might increase the THC level. I don't know. I just assume that it has that it's not really that high a THC level, since it's, pretty sort of sativa dominant, in many ways. But it could be, maybe if it has a lot of trichomes, but the plant material is very low or small, then maybe that would test as a high THC. I have no idea. just a guess. But
How do you like this blueberry bud right here?
look at that. Yikes. Look at the size of the pot, the container. This is a 20 ounce cup. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, I got to tell y'all, we're on. I like so you gave me a segue. I got to tell you something. I've been really impressed. Everybody's going into cloth pots. I've been really impressed with the iPower brand, because they made a really awesome pot for the best price out there, and they're taller and bigger. So when you do the 5 gallon, you actually get closer to a 5 gallon. I just bought the 3 gallon because I was, in honor of Mr. Green Gene, trying to go smaller, but I actually didn't do it because I got lazy and decided to rip out some real dried up stems and stick them in the 5 gallon pots that I had sitting there. But I did have one plant I put in the 3 gallon, and see, because I used the 1 gallon nursery pots. We talked about that. I used I find that, to me, I still think that's just for indoor growers. Do whatever, how you start it, however you want to. I like Rockwell. Everybody else likes to do paper towel method or whatever. I like Rockwell. I have a super high success rate, and then I can put it anywhere I want to, and I just love it. But I then put it into Pro Mix in a 1 gallon pot, a nursery pot, because it's real easy to get out to replant. So it's a lot less stress. Of course, again, we've talked about this, and we know you can tear the roots apart and stick them in there, repot, and it makes the plant react different. It'll make it sprout a whole bunch more, secondary, shoots and stuff like that. But what I found out was, when I was trying to do it before with a 1 gallon pot, if you filled it up, because that was a thing too. If you use a 1 gallon pot, you don't want to fill it up, but maybe 2/3 of the way. So when you want to transplant it, you've got a lot more, bottom into the pot that you transplant in. But what I found out was the iPower really, and I got them as a light company. I mean, these guys they've come up with some great stuff. This 3 gallon pot. So I was going, well, this plant is gonna. I thought I'm not gonna have enough anything underneath the 1 gallon, because they're let's see. They're like this tall. They're like this tall. So, to get them in a 3-gallon cloth pot, you wouldn't have much medium on the bottom. So I went ahead and I ripped out the old stalks that were all dried and had this real dry medium, and I went ahead and just threw all the bigger clones in there. And then I had one that was small, and I said, you know what? I'm going to try this 3-gallon pot, and I basically had to fill the crap out of it because they're taller. They've done something that nobody else did in cloth pots. They made a cloth pot that's 3 gallons that's like this tall, like a 12 to 14 inches tall. It's not like the other 3-gallon. And so I was able to take the one out of my 1-gallon nursery pot and repot into that with a whole bunch of medium under it. So, and I've got them. I've got them.
I think that's good cannabis. It's good to pot them up tall. I think they're really tall thin. Everybody laughs at me for using the Starbucks cups, but they're really good. They're too small, obviously, but for practical use.
I actually just try to do maybe like you said. You're making a joke about you got that one plant in a 1-gallon pot.
It's so big. The same plant that I had before. I made it into a gallon pot again. I don't know why she did. I think it's because I made a couple of cuts off for somebody else.
I thought about doing it. Again, I think it'd be great to do. I think you could do, and again, you're gonna. What you end up with was just a whole lot more plants in your space that yield less. And that's the one thing I'm fighting right now. I'm trying to find that balance. Again, we're teaching a bunch of older folks how to, because that's what the newer pot growers to me. The kids have always been doing it, but the biggest part of the industry, the biggest part of the industry is the older seniors that are growing, right? So trying to make it for them to make it easy. I think I can't really, teach to grow like you, but you're doing breeding. So you're a lot of your plants, you're not growing it for yield to smoke. You're smoking it. You're growing it for breeding. You're not growing because you want to grow all these different plants for breeding. The average guy out there
are useful.
Meds, he wants to grow in a little bit bigger pot. That's all.
Yeah, some things I do are useful. Some things apply, but other things are I had to just do them as a necessity for my own thing, and they don't really apply. But I think I've been advising people a long time, since the early 2000s online, and I kind of understand the differences between the way I grow and the way the needs that other people have. Because that's what I've been trying to do is get into all the other systems. And I have a lot of local friends around here that even, that grow in various different ways, and people that were hydroponic growers and all different kinds of methods. So I've been involved with people growing in cannabis in different ways. It can obviously.
And I understand that you've grown big ass plants too.
Outdoors.
It's not like I'm always growing in a cup. I'm a goofy son of a bitch. It's
all about. It's all about genetics.
But you're breeding, and your space requires you to grow small plants. And
it's winter time too right now. So
do what?
Winter time too right now. So
I really let the outdoors in. My soil is it's got a lot of, garden compost and backyard. So I actually literally use the backyard soil, to make sure that it's constantly inoculated with good stuff, every mix that I use. But it's also pretty high drainage. It's just a lot of sand and a lot of gravel and perlite and kitty litter. Not so much perlite. I should probably use more, but stuff that promotes the drainage is probably, I use a lot of that. So, and then I just repot. I put in organic, and I basically just water. I don't use any kind of fertilizers. And as long as I'm repotting, since I'm adding organic amendments, it's enough and I'm recycling my soil all the time. And by the way, I was going to add, but before I was going to say, one of the real keys to recycling soil I found is that is to remove all the old roots. Plants really.
Hold on that note, we're gonna have a guy on in the next 2 weeks who's gonna completely disagree with that 100%.
I know. And I've done it myself. I've actually rotated crops literally in containers before. You know what's really cool is
it's funny that y'all are talking about that, because in my new skunk #1s for the dual root zone pots, I actually used the matted up root ball from the old ninja fruit plants to separate my soil and media zones.
So roots are great. I'm not saying roots are bad. I'm just saying that your own roots are bad. Really, no crop in the world outdoors really likes to grow in its own roots. Although cannabis is one of the most tolerant. It's famously tolerant. Hemp is anyway.
Well,
for being able to grow
if you're doing outdoor straight in the soil, it'll actually pull nutrient. The mycorrhizal networks will pull the nutrients that plant wants to that area, but it only really applies to outdoor soil. It doesn't really apply, like you're saying, to container growing or something like that. It's different. You're trying to do two different things, and they aren't compatible. They both work great separately, but they don't work. Yeah.
I think you need more drainage indoors, and this is why I use. What I'm saying is, I pretty much mix my own soil, and it's nowhere near as much, organic matter and nutrient rich as something like Fox Farms. It's probably a lot more drainage oriented. And then I just repot the plants. As long as you repot them and their roots can continue to grow, they're going to get a lot of more nutrients. And then when they're flowering, it's a great way to control the nutrients, or to at least withhold, for example, nitrogen, which is a great idea, because then the buds come out with a lot more, a lot less chlorophyll and nicer taste. And you get it's one of the easiest paths to connoisseur quality cannabis is withhold nitrogen towards the end, folks. Everybody do it. And it's much easier in a small, and I'm not saying a small container, but when, it could be a 3-gallon pot, but I think the plant should be big. And let's face it, for anybody's purposes, it's much better to veg the plant up large. I don't advocate doing what I do small. I don't think it's, it's not viable in any way. Even someone just growing in their closet should veg the plant up considerably larger.
And I wasn't disparaging you at all either in that respect. I mean, because you're doing, like I said, I prefaced it with the fact that you're doing a lot of breeding and you've got limited space, and so you're doing the smaller thing. And that's why I also said, you have grown big shit. We know you've grown big shit, but I tell you what, but I've been fighting people. It blows my mind. I get these guys that go, I bought a 4x4 tent and I got 5 15-gallon pots I planted seeds in. I'm trying to get away from that. See, that's what I'm trying to get.
One of the problems with that is cannabis really likes a lot of oxygen at the roots,
It goes straight down too.
It's really hard to give roots oxygen when they're surrounded by waterlogged soil, or who knows how much water. See, the problem with it is the inability to water accurately is the problem. When you know what the size of your soil ball is, the whole thing is accurate watering, right? Because if you stick the small plant in a big pot, you have no idea when to water again. You're probably going to water too soon. And frankly, even a tiny plant is going to shoot its roots right to the bottom, even of a 5-gallon pot.
And so
I don't care if it's 4-inch pot.
You got that big pot, and the root goes straight down. Oh, let me get the root goes straight down. So all this medium up here, all this medium, because the nutrients will form a cone of salt, and all this medium up here will never get any nutrition, and the roots won't grow there, and it's a waste.
That's not true.
Smelly, it gets sour, and nobody wants to put their roots in that anyway. Ew, it's cold.
There's a way to fix that. So
Well,
if
you can
take
fix
your-
it, but
Let
it
me
is
finish
true
that. Let me
if you
finish.
Yeah, repot.
Hold on. No. There's a way to do it without repotting. When you transplant, you cut the tips of your tap roots. The tips of your tap roots are the ones that produce the root inhibitor that make them grow straight
Right.
down. By pruning
Right.
off your tips of your tap roots, they'll actually grow far more horizontal, especially in the first 2 weeks before they recover that cells. And you can actually use that in order to make them fully colonize the soil layer in that pot. It'll you won't notice it the first week, but by week 2, you'll see a night and day difference in a side by side.
But there's also, and this is funny because I will say this, even though I was arguing against this idea, the way I do grow in my greenhouse, I spray to waste. Okay, so I spray over the entire bag. So when the plants are young, I don't spray long enough to saturate the entire bag right off the bat. I spray to saturate the top of the bag and let it go down, and then through the day, by the end of the day, the whole bag has been is moist. But that allows the roots, because the roots are going to search for the moisture. They're going to search for the nutrients. They're going to search for the moisture. So if you drench the bag, they'll go to the bottom. If you just spray across the top of it, and this is why I love the spray method on the top of a bag, because it sprays on the entire diameter of the top of the bag and provides nutrients from edge to edge all the way around, instead of just like a dripper stuck in. And that's what I was talking about, the cone. Like if you stick a dripper in there, it's going to drip nutrients down into 3 or 4 inches into the soil or medium, and then the salt layer is going to form like this. And they've proven it because they've cut bags in half, and you can see a cone of salt. And then all the medium above that cone and above is wasted. So, and we're just talking about different methods and ideas. Nobody's really disagreeing with anybody here. I think we all got the same idea.
One of the things that it's hard for people to understand about about the idea of continuous repotting is the speed of growth of plants is phenomenal when you repot frequently. If you do less repots, if you go from a small pot to a large pot, your plant won't grow as fast as mine.
Yeah, people worry about all that stress, and it's not true, folks.
Same clone.
All this crazy shit you're doing, all these 25,000 different methods of cropping this, super cropping this,
I
and
wouldn't
that.
even do that. I just repot a bunch of times.
It's all to stress the fuck out of the plant. So, don't worry. You're like, I don't want to repot it because it stresses the plant. Oh, get over it. Repot.
I do it all the time. How could it possibly be? You're looking right at it.
I repot.
I go from a shot glass to a solo cup to a quart.
I put them directly back under the light. Did you hear what I said? I put them right back under the light.
I take the clone, I put the clone in the little cube or root wrapper, depending on what I'm doing. And then it goes from there, and then it goes into the 1 gallon or 4 gallon or 1 gallon or half gallon pot, and then it gets its roots and gets established, and then it goes into its final 5 gallon.
Yep.
That's Aquaponic. But then again, it's all do roots and aquaponics, where we can cheat quite a bit.
Well,
yeah,
that's a perfect fit. See, it's just a perfect fit because we want the plant to finish in a certain amount of time. So, and we're doing indoors too. We're not doing outdoors. You're not growing in a 5 gallon pot outdoors. We must be definitely talking about indoor growing.
Well, and then
my point is a double. It's a double point. It's not only the point of faster growth during vegetative, which is the only explanation I have, because a lot of times other growers have asked me, how come your plants veg so much faster than mine? And apparently it's because of continuous repotting. I don't know any other way to explain it. But then again, there's a bigger reason for doing it, and that is the reason to have a controlled and shaped root ball during flowering in the correct size pot, so that you can really and with really good draining soil, not heavy, organic, not your Fox Farm, soil
That's
with
why I
good,
love Pro Mix, because you can take Pro Mix and
practically
with
hydroponic.
aquaponics, like
I'm
you take the
We,
fish water or
Water with my-
nutrients or whatever and amend it with the ferments. It's great.
yep. So the other thing
all
with is
plants
the
need
dual
during
root zone.
flowering, because you should have built the plant. The plant should have built all its nutrients during veg. And if you do a good repotting and you're using good soil and everything, the plant has a tremendous amount of stored nutrients, and it can pretty much finish up flowering just on that alone, unless it's
we do the well. You can if you feed them a little bit all the way to the end, they'll actually produce a little bit more resins.
I think so too. I think so too. I actually I
Just
don't
a
want
little,
to. I don't want to
though. Just a
be
little bit.
arguing, but I believe
That's
you.
like, for example,
But my soil's already got a lot of P and K.
we don't top feed at all the last 3 or 4 weeks. We just use aquaponic water, and they're only getting that little bit of base from the fish water rather than having any kind of additional nutrient source, like you're saying. Just basically keeps the microbes alive more than anything else.
Totally.
Yep. So we need to wrap things up. It's getting pretty late. Why don't everyone tell everyone how to find you? Why don't you go first there, Roger?
I'm at ilovegrowingmarijuana.com, and this weekend I'll be at the George Parr Memorial commemorative concert Saturday. I'll be cooking, and then I'll be playing with some of my friends up on the stage, and if you can figure out where that's at, you're welcome to be there. But yeah, I'm right here in my studio. Here I am.
Cool. What about you, Mr. Green Jeans? How do people find you?
greenjeansgarden.com. Yeah. I've been getting a lot of people have been contacting me from this fantastic podcast.
Awesome.
You guys are amazing. And our guest tonight, Frenchy, oh my God, was he amazing, huh?
Right. What about you, Tommy? How do people find you? And maybe a quick update on what you've been doing since we're closing up.
Okay. You can find me on Old Fart Grows. I've not been posting in a while. That's kind of like the only thing I do. I'm not terribly social. I'm not on one of social media things or anything. Just kind of holed up here in the woods, working on some projects I'll be talking about in a little bit of a while. Doing some experimentations with bioavailability of products and getting medical products in very stabilized, easy dose kinds of stuff. So that's kind of fun if you like to play in the lab with stainless and glass like I do.
Oh, we're building a grow too.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. I wasn't going to reveal that. I was going to steal your thunder on that. So yeah, there's some exciting things coming out. So you can get a hold of me here on the podcast if you ever want to. I don't know why, but if there are questions about extractions or whatever, I'm happy to channel some of that through here. Or everybody out there, hop on the podcast. There are you can see chat things, and if there are questions come up, I'm always glad to help with that. That's kind of stuff I've been up to, and yes, that's kind of about it. I'm a pretty boring guy.
I think me and Tommy are going to have a video out soon too this week, just to go over a straight beginning to end video on the coconut oil method that he talks about. So we're gonna work
you
on that.
guys' oil infusion system changed my life. I mean, I have 3 or 4 older relatives, in-laws who are using it regularly now. It's unbelievable. You guys are.
Hey, that's what this community is about, sharing the love.
Yep. And what about
you, Brady? Tommy said that, this is nothing new. It's just something that we researched and we read, we found the things, we put it together. But the fact that you did do that research and put it together and share it with us, because it fucking works. Sorry, I don't usually like to cuss on the podcast, but I'm going to tell you what. My old lady who hates my guts rubbed it on her foot and topically, and it works. She quit bitching at me for a couple hours. So it's
That's your birthday. That's your birthday present there, Roger.
Oh, that was a long time ago. My birthday was last week. Y'all didn't call me. Don't try to be kissing up to me now. All right.
Oh, we tried, and we couldn't find you. We had a podcast set up.
Yeah, we were
I
supposed
was
to get
going
an
to sing.
invite to
I
us.
was going to
Yeah.
sing.
We had the
Yeah,
whole. We
my
had,
buddy, you know what? My buddy Garrigan that works, I got to give a shout out to Garrigan at IloveGrowingMarijuana.com. He's my friend that lives, well, west of here. And, and I was sleeping with the dogs next door, you know, because we got two properties next to each other, and like one's mine and one's hers, but she never comes home, so I pretty much stay over there as far as sleeping and all. I'm in my studio right now where I do all my computer work and all my musical stuff, you know. But I was over there sleeping with the dogs. So I wake up on my birthday thinking, yeah, it's going to suck just like the last few. Fucking whoopee doo. It's my birthday. And I get over here and there's a package on my step of my office. And it's a box. I go, okay, wait a minute. I didn't order. I mean, I order a lot of shit. So I had to think about it for a second. But I opened this box. Well, here, check this out. Hold on.
while we're waiting, Brain Grow, why don't you tell us how to find you while we're waiting for Roger?
All right, for sure. So in the
Well,
past week, I've
okay.
actually uploaded 2 videos. One was right before I went ahead and did the cut down for harvest, and the other one was to show everybody what I'm working on with my new grow. And I wanted to go ahead and thank everybody that takes the time to set their Thursday nights aside to spend it with us live, and everybody that's been reaching out to me on my various channels and whatnot. Other than that, make sure you go show me some love on those YouTube videos. Check me out on Instagram at brain_grow. And I'm over at IloveGrowingMarijuana.com as well, always posting stuff to my grow.
So
Awesome.
I
There you
get
go, Roger.
here and here's this box on my porch. See? And I'm going, what the hell is this? I open it up. My friend, one of the moderators at IloveGrowingMarijuana.com, Garrigan, sends me a freaking cake. He sent me a cake. A chocolate cake was on my porch to start my birthday off. So I want to give a shout out. It's freaking good too. It's called what?
Did a girl pop out of it?
No, unfortunately that didn't happen. But it was called. I'm gonna go shout out the company because I'm gonna tell you what, this is a freaking killer cake. It's Make a Wish. So there's a shout out to their company and thank you, Will. I appreciated that. And then all the guys, for all you guys on at ILGM that might be listening, Hogmaster, Country Boy, Donald J, and Garrigan all called me on Skype and talked, and we drank and smoked doobies and pressed rosin and shit till like for 4 hours. So I had to, you know, it's pretty. It was freaking great, but it sucks when the best birthday you've had in 10 years was virtual and not in real life. But thank you, all of you. Thank you so much for giving me that great birthday present.
That means he doesn't consider y'all real friends, guys.
Happy birthday,
No, I'm
Roger.
just kidding.
Yeah, it was nice. It was nice, and Will worked his butt off to get it together. I mean, try to get 4 grown men across the whole country and Canada, you know, to all meet at 9 o'clock to, you know, hang out with me for 3 or 4 hours. I really appreciated that. It helped me out a little bit, you know. So thank you, thank you.
Well,
And that
thanks a
cake
lot.
was freaking awesome too.
Thanks a lot. And if anyone's interested, they want to come check us out. Ouroboros, I think it's March 10th and 11th. I gotta double check here. Hold on a second. March 10th and 11th will be the medicinal herbs class I'll be teaching at the Ouroboros, and then on September 26th I'll be teaching a 1-day Aquaponic Cannabis class. It's a Monday. That'll be immediately following the 4-day aquaponic cannabis, or I'm sorry, 4-day commercial aquaponics class. There will be a 1-day cannabis add-on for those of you that are interested in going a little larger scale. So it'll be a little bit different class, and if you're more on the know what you're doing end, you'll probably enjoy it a little bit more than say the normal class. Not that there's anything wrong with the normal class, but we go over some basic stuff as well. This will be more of an advanced class.
But you better be normal.
Yeah. So, alrighty. Thanks for everyone. Be sure to check that out. Also, I wanted to mention if everyone that's listening could go give Marty at AP Meds a subscription. YouTube is fucking with him because he doesn't have 1,000 subscribers, and they've demonetized his channel for the time being. So if we could all rally together and get him enough subscribers to get back onto that, that'd be great and help him out quite a bit. We don't make hardly anything to date. I think I've made $112 on YouTube from the creation of this channel to currently, and they've really fucked us completely lately, in particular, because they screwed us on indexing. So by demonetizing the channel, it basically drops it out of the indexing things, so it's really hard for people to Google search us and find us by accident. So if you can, share the show and share the, try to help out Marty. Definitely do that if you can.
Yeah, well, I'll post it. I'll post it on the website too. I will. I'll post it in the podcast section and tell all the members to go over there and check out Marty's, thing and subscribe and all.
He ends up being even lower than I am because his channel is demonetized, or at least my channel's not demonetized. And granted, I mean, I'm fully transparent. I think it was $112. I'll pull it up at some point on here and just show you guys. But it's not anything. You have to make $100 to even pull anything out. So I could pull it out or whatever, but I just leave it in there.
Oh well, that's the way it is with all of them. You go and sell stuff for them. I mean, I've got the same kind of thing, affiliate type deals where you got to have $100 before you can get your money, even if you sold $68 worth of stuff.
Anyways, thanks everyone for watching. We're gonna wrap it up. Thank you again to Frenchy for coming on the show. Check him out, FrenchyCannoli.com. He have links to his classes and everything else, as well as Instagram. So thanks a lot, guys. Take care, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers.